I stared at the lawyer's mahogany desk, my fingers gripping the leather chair arms as he read my parents' will. 28 years of being their daughter, and they'd left everything to my younger sister, Madison. The Victorian house, the investment accounts, even Mom's jewelry collection. My inheritance. A single line to June, who has already received enough. My phone buzzed. Mom's text, "Sweetie, can you still cover our mortgage this month?" I typed 3 words that would change everything. Read the will. 6 months before that devastating moment in the lawyer's office, I was sitting at my kitchen table, writing out checks like I did every single month. The morning sun streamed through my apartment window, illuminating the stack of bills that weren't even mine. Mortgage payment for my parents' house, $2,400. Their health insurance premium, $875. Grocery delivery for their weekly shopping, $350. The numbers blurred together as exhaustion from my overnight shift at the hospital weighed on my shoulders. My name is June Matthews, and at 28 years old, I was working 2 jobs to support not just myself, but my entire family. By day, I served as a pediatric nurse at Children's Memorial Hospital, caring for sick kids who reminded me why I'd chosen this profession. By night, 3 times a week, I picked up shifts at a private clinic downtown, sacrificing sleep for the extra income my family desperately needed, or so they told me. The irony wasn't lost on me that while I was barely keeping my head above water, my younger sister Madison lived a completely different life. At 25, she still occupied her childhood bedroom in our parents' Victorian house, the walls covered with ring lights and camera equipment for her budding influencer career. Her morning routine consisted of yoga classes, smoothie runs, and hours spent crafting the perfect Instagram post for her 847 followers. June's too serious. I'd overheard Mom tell her church friends last Sunday. But Madison, she's creative. She just needs time to find her path. Time. That's what they called it when Madison slept until noon while I'd already completed a 12-hour shift. Finding her path apparently required designer activewear, professional photography equipment, and endless brunches at trendy cafes that I could never afford. Mom justified it all with practiced ease. "Your sister is building something special," she'd explained when I'd questioned the new ring light setup that appeared in Madison's room. "These days, social media is a real career. She just needs our support while she establishes herself." Our support. Except our meant my checkbook and my exhaustion. I'd done the math recently sitting in the break room at 3 in the morning, using the calculator on my phone to tally up what I'd given over the years. The number made my stomach turn $120,000 over 5 years. Not loans, gifts, support, love translated into currency. "Sweetie, you're so blessed to have such a good job," Dad would say whenever I visited, usually right before mentioning some new expense. "God provides for those who provide for others." The provision seemed to flow in only one direction. While I brown-bagged lunch to save money, Madison posted photos of her acai bowls and avocado toast. While I wore the same scrubs until they threadbare, she unboxed clothing hauls for her followers, each piece carefully curated and definitely not purchased with her non-existent income. That particular morning, as I sealed the last envelope, my phone rang. Dad's name appeared on the screen, and I already knew what was coming. "Morning, Princess," his voice boomed with false cheer. "How's my hard-working girl?" "Tired, Dad. Just got off a double shift." "Well, that's why I'm calling, actually. Your mother and I have been talking, and we've decided it's time to update our estate planning. Get everything in order. You know, we'd like you to be there for the meetings." Estate planning. The words should have set off alarm bells, but I was too exhausted to, trusting too well trained in being the responsible daughter to question it. "Of course," I heard myself saying. "When do you need me?" "This Thursday at 2. Can you make it?" Thursday meant requesting time off, losing hours, sacrificing income. But family came first. It always had. "I'll be there." "That's my girl. Oh, in June. This month's mortgage payment." "I already mailed it." "You're an angel. I don't know what we'd do without you." After hanging up, I pushed myself up from the table, my body protesting every movement. I needed to shower to sleep for a few hours before my evening shift. But as I walked past my refrigerator, something made me stop. There, held by a magnet shaped like a heart, was a photo from last Christmas. Mom, Dad, Madison, and me standing in front of their beautifully decorated tree. Madison wore a new designer dress. My parents beamed with pride, and I stood slightly apart, still in my scrubs, because I'd come straight from work. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Hey sis, can you Venmo me $50? Totally forgot I have a content creation workshop today and I'm short on cash. You're the best." Content creation workshop. Is that what they were calling it now? I opened Venmo, my finger hovering over the send button. $50. That was groceries for a week, gas for my car, part of my own rent that was already stretching me thin. But Madison needed it. The family needed me to provide it. I hit send. The response was immediate, a series of heart emojis, and OMG, you're literally the best sister ever. No thank you, just enthusiasm that I'd once again solved her problem. As I finally made it to my bedroom, exhaustion pulling at every cell in my body, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Not with the requests or the money or even Madison's lifestyle. Something was wrong with me for starting to question it all. I collapsed onto my bed, still in my scrubs, and set my alarm for 4 hours later. Before closing my eyes, I glanced at my bank balance on my phone. Savings $4,200. It should have been $40,000 by now, maybe more. But family came first. 3 days later, I was organizing paperwork for my parents' meeting with the estate attorney when I stopped by their house to pick up some documents they needed. Madison was out, probably at another yoga class, and Mom had run to the store. Dad was napping in his recliner, the TV droning in the background. "Just grab what you need from the office, sweetheart," Mom had told me over the phone. "You know where everything is." I did know. I'd been managing their paperwork for years, filing their taxes, organizing their medical records, making sure everything was in order because June's so good with details. The office was a converted bedroom that smelled like Dad's cologne and old paper. I quickly located the filing cabinet and started pulling the necessary documents. That's when I saw it. Mom's purse sat open on the desk, and poking out from the side pocket was a credit card statement. Not hers, Madison's. I shouldn't have looked. Privacy was important, boundaries mattered, all the things I'd tell myself later. But something made me pull that paper free. The number at the bottom made me sink into the desk chair. $30,000. The balance on Madison's credit card was $30,000. But that wasn't what made my hands shake as I read through the charges. Designer clothing stores, high-end restaurants, a MacBook Pro, photography equipment that cost more than I made in a month. And there at the bottom, the payment section showing exactly how this debt was being managed. Payment made by Catherine Matthews, full balance. My mother was paying Madison's credit card in full, every month, while telling me they could barely afford groceries. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly shoved the statement back where I found it, my heart pounding as Mom appeared in the doorway. "Oh, good, you found everything," she said brightly. "Did you see Madison's new camera? She's really taking this career seriously." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The documents in my hand felt heavier now, weighted with a truth I wasn't ready to face. They weren't poor. They weren't struggling. They were funding Madison's fantasy while I killed myself to support what I thought were their needs. "You okay, sweetie? You look pale." "Just tired," I managed. "Double shifts all week." Mom's face creased with concern that I now questioned was genuine. "You work too hard. You should take a vacation, do something nice for yourself." A vacation. With what money? With what time? Well, I paid their mortgage, and they paid Madison's designer shopping sprees. "I should go," I said, standing abruptly. "I have to get ready for work." "Of course. Thank you for handling all this estate stuff. You know how confused your father and I get with legal matters." Confused? Is that what we were calling it? I gathered the documents and headed for the door, Mom's voice following me. "Oh, June Madison's birthday is coming up. We're thinking of getting her that new iPhone for her content creation. Maybe you could contribute. I know money's tight for everyone right now." Money was tight, just not for everyone. I sat in my car outside their house for 10 minutes staring at the Victorian structure I'd helped maintain, the windows I'd paid to replace the roof I'd financed repairs for, all while my own apartment had peeling paint and a radiator that barely worked. The golden child lived inside, dreaming of influencer fame, while her bills disappeared like magic, and I was the magician making it all possible with every paycheck, every sacrifice, every exhausted moment of my life. My phone buzzed. Another text from Madison. "Thanks for the $50. You're seriously the best. Oh, BTW, can you cover my phone bill this month? Things are super tight with all my business expenses." Business expenses. For a business that made no money. I turned off my phone and drove to work. The credit card statement burned into my memory like a brand. $30,000. $120,000 from me. And somehow they were still asking for more. That night, as I cared for a 6-year-old recovering from surgery, his parents taking shifts to stay by his bedside, I thought about what family really meant. These strangers would do anything for their child, both of them sacrificing equally, both of them present. Neither of them asking the other to carry all the weight alone. "You're really good with him," the mother said as I adjusted the boy's IV. "Do you have kids of your own?" "No," I replied. "Just a younger sister." "She's lucky to have you." Was she, or had we all confused enabling with love, sacrifice with support? As I finished my rounds, the questions multiplied in my mind like the medical charts I updated. How much was too much? When did helping become hurting? And why did I feel guilty for even asking? The estate planning meeting was in 4 days. They wanted me there because I was responsible, reliable June who handled everything. But for the first time in my life, I wondered what would happen if I stopped handling it all, if I stopped being the solution to every problem, if I stopped writing checks and started asking questions. The thought terrified me more than any night shift, any exhaustion, any sacrifice I'd made. Because without my role as the provider, who was I to them, their daughter, or just their bank account? I wouldn't have to wait long to find out. Thursday arrived with unseasonable warmth for March in Portland, the kind of day that made everyone believe spring had come early. I'd managed to trade shifts with another nurse, losing a day's pay, but gaining the time to attend my parents' estate planning meeting. As I drove to the law offices of Brennan and Associates, I told myself this was important. This was family taking care of family planning for the future, being responsible. The building sat in the historic district, all red brick and climbing ivy, the kind of place that whispered old money and established traditions. I arrived 15 minutes early, finding my parents already in the waiting room. Dad wore his best suit, the navy one I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago. Mom clutched her purse like it contained state secrets, her nervous energy filling the space. "There's our girl," Dad boomed, standing to hug me. "Always punctual. That's why we need you here, June. You understand all this legal nonsense." "Where's Madison?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Mom's face performed a familiar dance of excuse-making. "Oh, you know your sister. She had a very important meeting with a potential brand sponsor. This could be her big break." A brand sponsor for 847 followers. I bit back the observation and smiled, instead the expression automatic after years of practice. "Shall we head in?" A woman in her 50s emerged from an office, her handshake firm and professional. "I'm Patricia Brennan. You must be June. Your parents have told me so much about you." The conference room smelled of leather and lemon polish, afternoon light streaming through tall windows. Ms. Brennan arranged documents across the mahogany table, while my parents settled into their chairs. I pulled out my notebook, the same one I used for managing their finances, ready to take whatever notes might be needed. So, Ms. Brennan began, her eyes moving between the 3 of us. "Let's start with the basics. We're here to ensure your assets are properly distributed according to your wishes. Can you walk me through your major holdings?" Mom looked at me expectantly. Of course. I cleared my throat and began the recitation I knew by heart. The house on Elm Street, purchased in 1992, currently valued at approximately $600,000. The mortgage has 18 months remaining. I didn't mention who'd been paying that mortgage. There's the investment account with Fidelity last statement showing $208,000. 2 vehicles both paid off. Mom's jewelry collection, which was appraised at $40,000 after Grandma passed. Dad's pension from the railroad plus Social Security for both. Ms. Brennan nodded approvingly, making notes. You're very organized. It's refreshing to see families who communicate so openly about finances. If only she knew. And you have 2 daughters, correct? The attorney continued. June here and Madison. Mom supplied quickly. She couldn't make it today. She's building her career as a social media influencer. I see. Well, it's good to have at least one family member here who understands the process. Ms. Brennan's smile toward me was warm, appreciative. Now let's discuss your wishes for distribution. Dad shifted in his chair, that telltale sign he was about to say something he'd rehearsed. We believe in fairness, Ms. Brennan. Both our girls are precious to us. Of course. And how would you define fairness in this context? The silence stretched too long. Mom's fingers worried the handle of her purse, while Dad studied the wood grain of the table with sudden intensity. I watched them, these people I'd loved and trusted my whole life, as they struggled with words they'd clearly discussed in private. Well, Mom finally ventured. Circumstances are different for each child. We want to make sure everyone is taken care of appropriately. Appropriately. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire I couldn't yet see. Ms. Brennan continued professionally pulling out forms and explaining options. Trusts versus direct inheritance, tax implications, the importance of updating beneficiaries. I took notes mechanically, my handwriting neat and precise, while something cold settled in my stomach. Now, June Orse, the attorney, addressed me directly. As someone who's clearly involved in your parents' financial planning, do you have any questions or concerns? Before I could respond, Dad interjected. June's always been our practical one. Head on her shoulders, good job, takes care of herself. She got the brains in the family. The praise should have warmed me. Instead, it felt like ice forming along my spine. That's wonderful, Ms. Brennan said. It must be a comfort to know you have a daughter who's so capable. Oh, yes, Mom agreed quickly. June's never needed much help, even as a child so independent. Not like... She caught herself, but the sentence hung unfinished. Not like Madison, the golden child who needed protecting, supporting endless financial cushioning against the harsh realities of adult life. We worked through the paperwork for another hour, discussing everything from medical directives to power of attorney, when Ms. Brennan suggested I might be the logical choice for executor. Given my clear understanding of their finances, my parents exchanged another of those loaded looks. We'll need to think about that, Dad said carefully. Family dynamics, you understand. I understood more than they realized. 40 minutes into the meeting, the conference room door burst open. Madison stood there in designer workout wear, her hair in an artfully messy bun, phone in one hand and iced coffee in the other. So sorry I'm late. She didn't sound sorry at all. Traffic was insane, and then I had to stop for coffee because I literally can't function without caffeine. Ms. Brennan's professional smile tightened slightly. You must be Madison. We're discussing your parents' estate planning. Oh, right, the will stuff. Madison dropped into the chair next to Mom, immediately pulling out her phone. Don't mind me. June's got this covered, right, sis? She didn't wait for an answer, her attention already absorbed by whatever was on her screen. I watched our parents' faces soften as they looked at her, their baby, who still needed protecting at 25. Perhaps we should recap what we've covered, Ms. Brennan suggested. No need, Madison said without looking up. Like I said, June handles all the boring stuff. That's what she's good at. Boring stuff, like working myself into exhaustion to keep their lives afloat. Ms. Brennan continued the meeting, but the dynamic had shifted. Every time she asked a question, Madison would sigh dramatically or check her phone. When discussing the house, she perked up enough to ask about renovation possibilities. For when the time comes, her words so casual about our parents' mortality that Mom actually flinched. "I'm thinking of knocking out the wall between the kitchen and dining room," Madison mused. "Open concept is so much better for content creation. Natural light is everything." "Madison," I said quietly, "this isn't really the time." "God, June, relax. I'm just thinking ahead. Someone has to have vision for that place." That place, our childhood home reduced to a future content creation studio. Ms. Brennan wrapped up the meeting with practiced efficiency, probably eager to see us go. As we gathered paperwork, she handed me her card. "If you have any questions as executor, if you're chosen as executor, please don't hesitate to call." "Thank you." I managed slipping the card into my notebook. We filed out of the office, Madison already halfway to the parking lot, her yoga mat bouncing against her hip as she rushed to her next class. Mom and Dad lingered on the sidewalk, the afternoon sun highlighting the gray in their hair. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart," Mom said, patting my arm. "You're so good with all these details. Madison just doesn't have the patience for it." "Speaking of which," Dad added, his timing no accident, "next month we're going to need a little extra. The property taxes are coming due, and with everything else." Everything else being Madison's lifestyle I now knew, but I nodded anyway, already calculating what extra shifts I could pick up. "June, you're a lifesaver," Mom beamed. "We're so blessed to have you." They walked to their car, Dad's hand on Mom's back, a united front of parents who'd just spent 2 hours planning how to leave everything to one daughter while the other paid their bills. I sat in my own car engine, off watching them drive away. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Thanks for handling that boring meeting, BTW. Can you believe how shabby that lawyer's office was? When I'm a successful influencer, I'm definitely hiring someone better. Speaking of which, I have this amazing opportunity to attend a content creator retreat in Malibu next month. It's only $3,000. Maybe we can call it an early birthday present." $3,000 for a retreat, while I calculated whether I could afford both gas and groceries this week. I started my car and headed back to work, arriving early for my shift. The break room was empty, giving me space to sit with my thoughts and the notebook full of estate planning information. Everything was there in my neat handwriting: assets, accounts, valuations, the concrete proof of a lifetime's accumulation, all of it designated for distribution after death. But nowhere in those notes was there a column for what I'd contributed. No line item for the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the sacrifices that had kept it all afloat. Just the cold, hard facts of what existed and who would receive it. "You okay?" My colleague Sarah poked her head into the break room. "You look like someone stole your lunch money." The laugh that escaped me was bitter. "Something like that." She came in, closing the door behind her. Sarah was one of the few people who knew about my family situation, having covered for me countless times when I needed to handle their emergencies. "Family stuff," she guessed, settling across from me. "Estate planning meeting today." "Ah." She didn't need more explanation. "Let me guess. They're leaving everything to Madison because you're so successful, and she needs it more." The accuracy of her assumption must have shown on my face because her expression shifted to sympathy mixed with frustration. "June, when are you going to stop letting them do this to you?" "It's not that simple. They're my parents." "And you're their daughter, not their personal ATM." I wanted to argue, to defend them, to explain that it wasn't like that, but the words wouldn't come because increasingly it was exactly like that. "You know what the worst part is," I said instead. I sat in that meeting taking notes, being helpful, being good, reliable June, and the whole time they were planning how to make sure I keep being exactly that, the one who handles everything but receives nothing. Sarah reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You deserve better." Did I, or had I trained them too well in what I would accept? As I changed into my scrubs for another 12-hour shift, I thought about Ms. Brennan's assumption that I'd be executor. Of course I would be. Who else would handle the boring stuff, the details, the responsibility? That night I couldn't focus. My patients received the same level of care because that was non-negotiable, but my mind kept drifting to that conference room, to my parents' careful words about fairness and appropriate distribution, to Madison scrolling through her phone while they planned her future security using my present sacrifice. During my break, I found myself in the chapel, a quiet space I rarely visited. The silence felt heavy, expectant, like it was waiting for me to acknowledge truths I'd been avoiding. I wasn't the favored child. I was the functional one, the one who could be counted on to provide without question, to sacrifice without complaint, to love without reciprocation. And as long as I kept playing that role, nothing would change. My phone lit up with another text from Mom. "Forgot to mention at the meeting, the house needs new gutters. Can you handle that next month? Love you." Can you handle that I always had? That was the problem. As I headed back to my shift, I made a decision. I would handle the gutters. I would pay the property taxes. I would continue being good, reliable June. But I would also start documenting everything, keeping records not for their taxes or their estate planning, but for my own understanding of exactly what this relationship had become. Because Ms. Brennan was wrong about one thing. We weren't a family that communicated openly about finances. We were a family built on the silence of one person's sacrifice and everyone else's willful blindness to it. The meeting had shown me exactly where I stood in their plans. Now I had to figure out where they stood in mine. My 28th birthday fell on a Saturday, which meant I could actually attend my own celebration without losing a shift. Mom had insisted on hosting dinner at their house, promising my favorite meal and a special surprise. As I drove through the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood, I tried to summon some enthusiasm. Birthdays in the Matthews family had always been productions complete with themed decorations and Mom's signature coconut cake. At least they were for Madison. The April evening was mild cherry blossoms from the neighbor's tree drifting across the windshield like pink snow. I'd bought myself a new blouse for the occasion, a small indulgence that had required careful budgeting. 28 felt like it should mean something, mark some kind of adult milestone. Instead, I felt caught between the life I was living and the one I'd imagined for myself. The house glowed with warm light and I could smell pot roast from the driveway. Dad opened the door before I could knock his face bright with an emotion I couldn't quite read. "There's the birthday girl 28 years ago you made us parents. Best day of our lives." The words should have touched me. Instead, they felt rehearsed like lines from a play we'd been performing for so long we'd forgotten it wasn't real. Inside the dining room table was set with Mom's good china, the pieces she only brought out for special occasions. Balloons bobbed in the corner and a banner reading, "Happy Birthday, June," hung across the archway. It was lovely, thoughtful even. So why did it feel like a stage set? Surprise. Madison emerged from the kitchen wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Happy birthday, sis." She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her lipstick, then thrust a small envelope into my hands. "Open it later," she said with a wink. "It's super special." Mom bustled in with appetizers, her face flushed from cooking. "Sit, sit, birthday girls don't help in the kitchen." The rule apparently only applied to birthdays because every other family dinner found me elbow deep in dishes, while Madison updated her Instagram stories. But tonight, I was guest of honor. Tonight, I got to pretend this was normal, that we were a normal family celebrating a normal milestone. Dinner unfolded with practiced precision. Dad carved the roast with ceremony, Mom made sure my plate was full, and Madison documented everything with her phone, murmuring about family content and authentic moments. I smiled, laughed at Dad's familiar jokes, complimented Mom's cooking, played my part in our family performance. "So," Dad said as Mom cleared the dinner plates, 28, that's a big number, Princess. Any special plans for this year?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A work email about schedule changes, but the notification preview showed something else that made my heart skip. A message from Human Resources about my annual review with the subject line, "Congratulations on your promotion." I'd applied for the head nurse position 3 months ago, gone through 2 rounds of interviews, demonstrated my skills and dedication. but with everything else happening, I'd almost forgotten about it. "What is it, dear?" Mom asked, returning with the cake, 28 candles flickering like tiny stars. The words felt surreal. "I got promoted, head nurse for the pediatric unit." "Oh my God, June." Madison squealed, her phone already recording. "That's amazing. How much more money is that?" Trust Madison to zero in on the financial aspect immediately. "It's substantial," I admitted. "About 30% increase plus better benefits." I watched my parents' faces transform, could actually see the calculations happening behind their eyes. 30% more meant 30% more. They could ask for 30% more problems I could solve, 30% more of Madison's dreams I could finance. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom said, but her smile had shifted into something strategic. "You've worked so hard for this." A toast. Dad raised his wine glass, his voice booming with pride that felt different from the pride I'd hoped for. "To June, our successful daughter. You'll be able to do so much good with that extra income." So much good for them. "Make a wish," Madison commanded, her phone camera ready. I leaned forward, the candle's heat warming my face, and closed my eyes. What did I wish for? Recognition, appreciation, or just the chance to enjoy my own success without it becoming another resource for them to tap? I blew out the candles in one breath, and my family clapped like I'd performed a magic trick, which in a way I had. The magic of making money appear when they needed it, of solving problems with my checkbook, of being endlessly reliable. We ate cake vanilla with coconut frosting, and I opened Madison's card. Inside was a $5 gas station gift card, the price sticker still attached. "For your commute," she explained brightly. "I know gas is so expensive these days." $5 from someone whose $30,000 credit card bill I'd seen with my own eyes. But I smiled and thanked her, because that's what good daughters do. "Speaking of expenses," Mom said, and there it was, the transition I'd been waiting for. "Your father and I have been thinking about the house. With you doing so well now, especially with this promotion, we were wondering if you might help us with some updates. The kitchen really needs work, and Madison's room." "My room needs better lighting for filming," Madison interjected. "Natural light is everything for content creation. I was thinking skylights." "Skylights. In the house I was paying the mortgage on." "We can talk about it later," I said, trying to salvage something of my birthday. "Tonight's about celebrating, right?" "Of course." Dad agreed too quickly. "Absolutely. Our June, the head nurse. You know, I was just telling Bob at the hardware store about how successful you are. He couldn't believe one person could work so hard." One person. That was the key phrase. One person working hard so others didn't have to. After cake, I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment alone. The hallway felt like a museum of our family history photos covering every wall. Madison's dance recitals where I'd worked overtime to pay for costumes, family vacations I'd funded but barely enjoyed because I was checking work emails, my college graduation where they'd spent the entire ceremony talking about Madison's gap year plans. I paused at Dad's study door, slightly ajar. The desk lamp was on papers scattered across the surface. I shouldn't look. It was his private space. But something pulled me forward, maybe the same instinct that had made me notice Madison's credit card statement. There next to his coffee mug was a legal pad covered in his handwriting, estate planning notes from our meeting with Ms. Brennan. My eyes scanned the page before I could stop myself. Madison, house all contents, jewelry investments after June pays off mortgage. June, successful doesn't need inheritance. Remind attorney to update will ASAP before June finds out about promotion. That last line hit like a physical blow. Before June finds out about promotion. They'd known. Somehow they'd known about my promotion before I did, and their first thought wasn't pride or celebration. It was making sure I wouldn't inherit anything before I became even more successful. June, Mom's voice from downstairs. "We have one more surprise." I backed away from the desk, my hands shaking. They'd planned this. The birthday dinner, the celebration, all of it designed to butter me up before asking for more money while simultaneously ensuring I'd never see a penny of what I'd invested. Coming. I called back my voice steady through years of practice. They were assembled in the living room like a tableau. Madison curled on the couch, with her phone parents standing by the fireplace. Dad held a wrapped box, his smile wide and expectant. "We wanted to give you something special," he said, handing me the gift. "For all you do." I unwrapped it carefully, the paper falling away to reveal a photo album. Inside were pictures of our family, carefully curated moments that told a specific story. June helping with homework, June cooking Thanksgiving dinner, June painting the fence, June fixing the car. Every photo showed me in service to them, working, providing, giving. "We thought you'd like to remember all the wonderful times," Mom said softly. "You've always been such a help to this family." A help, not a daughter, a help. I couldn't finish the sentence. What was it? A monument to my utility, a scrapbook of sacrifice. "There's more," Madison said, bouncing up from the couch. "Look at the last page." I flipped to the end where they'd pasted a printout of a text conversation. My texts to them over the years. Mortgage payment sent. Transferred money for repairs. Covered the medical bill. Sent extra for groceries. A comprehensive record of my financial support presented like achievements to be celebrated. "You've given us so much," Dad said, his voice thick with emotion I now questioned. "We wanted you to see how much it's meant to us, but not enough to leave me anything. Not enough to stop asking for more. Just enough to document it to prove they knew exactly what they'd taken. Thank you." I managed, because what else could I say? "Thank you for showing me exactly how you see me. Thank you for the evidence of your calculated use of my love." "Group hug," Madison announced, and suddenly they were all around me, arms encircling the scent of Mom's perfume and Dad's aftershave and Madison's expensive shampoo, creating a cloud of family. I stood rigid in the center, holding the album of my exploitation, wearing my new blouse that had required such careful budgeting, promoted to a position they saw only as an expanded resource. "We love you, June," Mom whispered, "our responsible girl." After they released me, I gathered my things quickly, claiming an early shift that didn't exist. They walked me to the door, still glowing with the success of their surprise, unaware that they'd given me the greatest gift possible: clarity. "Oh, before you go," Mom said, "about that kitchen renovation." "I'll think about it," I said, cutting her off. "I need to review my finances with the new position." Something in my tone must have registered, because she blinked, taken aback. I'd never put them off before, never suggested my money might have other purposes. "Of course," she recovered. "No rush, whenever you can." I drove home through streets that blurred with unshed tears, the photo album on my passenger seat, like evidence in a crime I was only now recognizing. 28 years old, head nurse, successful, independent, accomplished, and to my family, nothing more than a resource to be managed, a well that would never run dry. In my apartment, I set the album on my kitchen table and opened my laptop. If they were documenting my support, I could do the same. I created a spreadsheet going back through bank statements, canceled checks, Venmo history. The numbers accumulated like grievances, each entry a moment I'd chosen them over myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "Thanks for being the best sister ever. Can't wait to renovate my room with your help." I didn't respond. Instead, I continued entering data, building a case for a crime that wasn't illegal, but felt like theft all the same. They'd stolen my 20s, my savings, my dreams of home ownership or travel, or just the simple luxury of not constantly calculating whether I could afford both food and their needs. The promotion should have been a celebration. Instead, it was a revelation. They didn't see success. They saw opportunity. They didn't see their daughter. They saw their solution. As midnight passed and my birthday officially ended, I made myself a promise. I would continue documenting everything, every request, every payment, every sacrifice. Not because I planned to show them or demand repayment, but because I needed to see it clearly laid out in undeniable black and white. The photo album they'd given me told one story. The spreadsheet I was creating told another. Somewhere between those two versions was the truth about what we'd become and what I needed to do about it. But first, I had a will to think about, one that would leave me nothing except the bitter understanding that being the good daughter had cost me everything. 2 weeks after my birthday life settled into a new rhythm, I'd started my position as head nurse, the increased responsibilities matching my temperament far better than I'd expected. The pediatric unit ran like clockwork under my organization, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely proud of something that belonged only to me. The salary increase sat untouched in a new savings account one my family didn't know about. Not yet. It was a Thursday morning unseasonably cool for late April. I just finished a particularly challenging night shift helping stabilize a premature infant whose parents had held vigil for 36 straight hours. Their devotion taking turns so someone always had skin-to-skin contact with their baby reminded me what family was supposed to look like. Equal sacrifice, shared burden, unconditional love that didn't come with a price tag. I'd barely made it home, hadn't even changed out of my scrubs when my phone exploded with calls. Madison, Mom, Dad, Madison, again. My first thought was that something had happened to the house, maybe a fire or break-in. But the voicemail from Mom was pure hysteria. June. Oh God, June, it's your father. His heart, we're at Regional Medical. Come quickly, please. The exhaustion evaporated. I grabbed my keys, my medical brain already running through possibilities. Dad was 62, relatively healthy despite his love of red meat and aversion to exercise. Some chest pain last year that turned out to be indigestion. But hearts were unpredictable and Mom's panic sounded real. Regional Medical was 20 minutes away. I made it in 12 using every shortcut learned from years of racing to work. The emergency department was familiar territory. I'd done rotations here during nursing school. The triage nurse recognized me. June, your family's in room 7. Dr. Morrison is with them. I knew Morrison, a competent cardiologist who didn't suffer fools or exaggeration. If he was involved, this was serious. I pushed through the curtain to find Dad on a gurney connected to monitor's oxygen cannula in place. His color was good, too good for a major cardiac event. Mom clutched his hand like she was preventing him from floating away. Madison sat in the corner filming. June. Dad's voice was strong, another inconsistency. You came. Of course I came. I moved to the monitors, reading the numbers with practiced eyes. Heart rate slightly elevated but regular. Blood pressure normal. Oxygen saturation perfect. What happened? He collapsed. Mom interjected before Dad could answer. Right in the kitchen, clutching his chest, gasping. I thought we were losing him. Madison looked up from her phone. I got some of it on video. The ambulance arrival was super dramatic. I stared at her. You filmed Dad having a cardiac event. Content is everywhere. She shrugged. Besides, it'll be good for the vlog. Day my dad almost died will get major engagement. Before I could respond, Dr. Morrison entered with a tablet. His expression was carefully neutral, the look of a doctor managing difficult family dynamics rather than a medical crisis. Ms. Matthews? He nodded at me. I understand you're in the medical field. Head of pediatric at Children's Memorial. I confirmed. What are his test results? Morrison glanced at my parents, then back at me. EKG is normal. Cardiac enzymes negative. Chest X-ray clear. We're waiting on one more round of blood work, but preliminarily your father appears to have had a panic attack. Panic attack. Mom's voice pitched higher. But the pain, the gasping. Panic attacks can mimic heart attacks very convincingly, Morrison explained patiently. We'll keep him for observation, run a stress test to be safe, but I'm not seeing anything concerning from a cardiac standpoint. I studied Dad's face as Morrison spoke. Something flickered there, not relief, exactly more like disappointment. However, Morrison continued, your father is insisting on a full cardiac workup, every test available. I've explained that insurance typically won't cover non-indicated procedures, but he seems quite adamant. Money's no object when it comes to health, Dad said quickly. Right, June? There it was, the setup. We'll discuss it, I said carefully. Thank you, Dr. Morrison. After he left, the room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors. Madison had stopped filming, probably because actual medical information wasn't dramatic enough for her followers. Mom continued her death grip on Dad's hand while he avoided my eyes. A panic attack, I said finally. What triggered it? Does it matter? Mom snapped. He could have died. But he didn't. His heart is fine. So what happened this morning that caused such severe anxiety? They exchanged looks, the kind that told me this was rehearsed, but they hadn't counted on Morrison being so direct with his diagnosis, hadn't expected me to push back. Financial stress, Dad admitted finally. The bills, the house, trying to keep everything afloat. It just overwhelmed me. Financial stress. While I paid their mortgage, their groceries, their utilities. While they paid Madison's credit cards and funded her lifestyle. Maybe I should take some time off. Dad continued warming to his theme. Focus on my health. Of course, that would mean losing income. You're retired, Dad. You have your pension. Well, yes, but there are gaps. Medical bills from this will be enormous. And if I need cardiac rehabilitation... I pulled out my phone, opening the calculator app. Let's see. Ambulance transport, roughly $1,500. Emergency room visit with full workup, maybe $3,000 with your insurance. Stress test, another $1,000. You're looking at around $6,000 maximum. $6,000. Mom gasped like I'd suggested amputating a limb. We don't have that kind of money. Then it's good that insurance covers most of it, I said evenly. Your out-of-pocket will be your deductible, which is what, $2,000. The room went quiet again. Madison fidgeted with her phone while my parents recalibrated their strategy. You seem very calm about your father's health, Mom accused. I'm calm because he's stable. His tests are normal. He's going to be fine. I moved to Dad's bedside, checking his peripheral pulses automatically. But I'm concerned about this panic attack. What aren't you telling me up? Dad closed his eyes. You wouldn't understand. You've never had to worry about money. The irony of that statement from a man whose bills I paid nearly choked me. I need to inform my work. I'll be late, I said, instead of screaming. I'll be right back. I stepped into the hallway, breathing deeply. My phone already had texts from Madison. Dad's being so dramatic, but Mom says we have to play along, followed by, BTW, can you cover my car payment this month? Tots forgot with all this drama. I called my supervisor explaining the situation. She was understanding, told me to take the day. As I hung up, I noticed a familiar figure by the nurse's station. Carla, one of my nursing school classmates now working emergency. June heard your dad was brought in. He okay? Panic attack. I said, then lowered my voice. Can I ask you something in confidence? She guided me to a quiet corner. What's up? When he came in, what did he present with? Carla glanced around, then pulled up his intake chart on her tablet. Honestly, he walked in, said he'd had severe chest pain at home, but it resolved in the car. Vitals were stable from admission. We did full protocol because he insisted he'd collapsed, but... She shrugged. But he walked in. Under his own power. Your mom was more upset than he was, kept talking about how gray he'd been at home, how he'd stopped breathing. But his O2 sats were perfect, no cyanosis indicators. We see this sometimes. See what? Family members amplifying symptoms. Sometimes for attention, sometimes for other reasons. Your dad specifically asked about admission criteria, how long observation would be, whether you'd be notified as next of kin. He'd asked if I'd be notified. Of course. Thanks, Carla. Hey, family stuff is complicated. Just focus on the fact that he's okay. I returned to room 7 to find Madison live streaming from the hallway. Hey everyone, super scary day, but Daddy's gonna be okay. Thank you all for the prayers and positive vibes. Madison, I said sharply, this is a hospital. People are actually sick here. She ended the stream with a pout. God, June, I'm just updating my followers. They care about our family. All 847 of them. Inside, Mom was helping Dad sit up. His color remained good, his breathing even. Whatever had happened at home, he wasn't in distress now. The doctor says I can go home tomorrow, Dad announced, but I'll need monitoring, someone to stay with me. I'll hire a visiting nurse, I offered. A stranger. When I have a daughter who's a nurse. Mom's eyes filled with convenient tears. June, he needs family. He needs you. I have a job, a new position with responsibilities. More important than your father's life. The tears spilled over. We've never asked you for anything. Mom. The word came out sharper than intended. You ask me for money every month. The tears stopped like a faucet turning off. Madison's eyes widened, probably because I'd never pushed back before. That's different, Mom said stiffly. That's family helping family. And this isn't. He could die, June. Dr. Morrison literally just said his heart is fine. Doctors can be wrong. What if they missed something? What if he has another attack and no one's there? I looked at Dad, who had the grace to appear uncomfortable with Mom's performance, but not uncomfortable enough to stop it. I'll take FMLA leave, I heard myself saying. Unpaid family medical leave, 1 week. If you're not better by then, we hire professional help. You're an angel, Dad said quickly before I could change my mind. I knew we could count on you. Count on me. To sacrifice my wages, my new position's momentum, my own well-being for a panic attack they were inflating into a cardiac crisis. I spent the rest of the day at the hospital coordinating with Morrison, arranging Dad's discharge, playing the devoted daughter, while inside I seethed. Madison left after an hour to attend a crucial influencer workshop. Mom alternated between fawning over Dad and texting prayer requests to her church group, ensuring maximum attention for their crisis. That evening, Morrison pulled me aside. Your father's insisting on a cardiac catheterization. I've explained it's unnecessary, but he wants to be absolutely certain. That's an invasive procedure with its own risks, which I've explained, but he says you'll cover any costs insurance doesn't. Morrison's expression was carefully neutral. I wanted to verify that before scheduling. Don't schedule it, I said firmly. His tests are normal. We're not doing unnecessary procedures. I'll document that in his chart. As Morrison walked away, I realized this was the first time I'd said no to a financial request from my family. It felt strange, foreign, like wearing someone else's clothes. Dad was discharged the next morning with fanfare worthy of a war hero's homecoming. Mom had alerted extended family who gathered at their house with casseroles and sympathy. I set up a medication schedule. He didn't need checked vitals that were perfect played nurse to a patient who wasn't sick. You're so good to us. Aunt Linda gushed Mom's sister, who'd never offered to help with their bills. Taking time off work and everything. She's always been the responsible one, Mom said, basking in reflected attention. We're so blessed. Madison arrived late afternoon with a film crew. Not a real one, just 2 friends with phones, but she directed them like Scorsese. I want to capture Dad's recovery journey, she announced. It'll be inspiring content. He had a panic attack, I reminded her. There's no recovery journey. Don't be negative, she snapped. This is important for my brand. Her brand, built on our father's fake cardiac emergency. For a week, I stayed at my parents' house, sleeping in my childhood room that had been converted to Madison's clothing storage. I monitored Dad's perfect vitals, administered unnecessary medications, watched him milk his condition for every ounce of sympathy, while losing wages I couldn't afford to lose. Madison used the week to create a 12-part series about family health scares that gained her 100 new followers. Mom coordinated meal deliveries from church friends, none of which she cooked despite being perfectly capable. And Dad alternated between clutching his chest when others were around and being completely normal when we were alone. You know, he said on day 5, finding me on the back porch during a rare moment of solitude, this has been nice, having you home. I'm losing $700 a day in wages, I said without looking at him. Money isn't everything, princess. It is when you don't have it, He was quiet for a moment. "Your mother thinks we should update the will. Make sure Madison's protected if something happens to us. Madison's 25. She can protect herself." "She's not like you, June. She needs guidance support. The house would give her stability." "The house I paid for. Do what you think is best." I said the words ash in my mouth. "I knew you'd understand. You always do." On the 7th day, I packed my things while Dad demonstrated his miraculous recovery by mowing the lawn. Mom tried to extend my stay, citing vague concerns about his fragile state. But I held firm. I'd given them a week of my life-lost wages I desperately needed played along with their medical theater. Enough. "But what if he has another episode?" Mom pleaded. "Then you call 911, like you did this time." "You're abandoning him," Madison accused, camera rolling. His own daughter, a nurse, abandoning him in his time of need. I looked directly at her camera. I took unpaid leave to provide 24/7 care for a man whose tests all came back normal. I've lost $5,000 in wages. How exactly is that abandonment? She stopped recording, probably because the truth didn't fit her narrative. As I drove away from their house, my phone pinged with a notification from my bank. My new savings account, the one they didn't know about, had dropped below $1,000 after a week without pay. But at least it still existed. At least I'd said no to the catheterization, drawn one small boundary in the sand. That night, alone in my apartment, I added up the true cost of Dad's panic attack. Lost wages, $4,900. Gas for daily hospital visits, $60. Medications he didn't need but insisted on $200. The look on his face when Dr. Morrison said his heart was fine, priceless, and devastating in equal measure. I pulled out my laptop and updated my spreadsheet, adding a new column, Manipulation Tactics. Under it, I wrote, Dad's cardiac event. Panic attack presented as heart attack to trigger caregiver response. 1 week unpaid leave, lost wages, $4,900. Family collected sympathy, attention, and free meals while I provided unnecessary care. The documentation felt like armor, each entry strengthening my resolve. They'd played their trump card, the health scare, designed to remind me that good daughters sacrifice everything. But their performance had been too transparent, their greed too obvious. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Dad's tired tonight. Are you sure you can't stay 1 more week? I didn't respond. I was tired too. Tired of being their solution, their bank account, their proof that they'd raised at least one successful child. Tired of Madison's camera turning our family dysfunction into content. Tired of panic attacks dressed up as heart attacks and love that came with a price tag I could no longer afford to pay. Most of all, I was tired of being the only one who seemed to care that none of this was normal. That families weren't supposed to work this way, with one person bleeding themselves dry while others complained the flow wasn't fast enough. Tomorrow, I'd return to my real job, my real life, the place where my skills meant something beyond my ability to pay bills. But tonight, I sat with my spreadsheet and my anger and my growing understanding that being the good daughter was killing me faster than any heart attack could kill my father. The will. They were updating the will while I slept in Madison's storage room and monitored his non-existent symptoms, making sure their responsible daughter would keep being responsible even after they were gone. Especially after they were gone. May arrived with unseasonable rain, turning Portland into a watercolor painting of grays and greens. I'd thrown myself back into work after Dad's theatrical medical emergency, picking up extra shifts to recoup the lost wages. The pediatric unit had welcomed me back with the controlled chaos I'd grown to love. Real emergencies, real solutions, real gratitude from families who appreciated care given freely. 3 weeks had passed since Dad's miraculous recovery. He'd returned to his routine of golf twice a week and poker nights with his buddies, showing no signs of the fragile condition that had cost me $5,000. Madison had milked the content for all it was worth, gaining almost 200 new followers from her Family Health Crisis series. Mom had frozen enough sympathy casseroles to last through summer. I should have known the respite wouldn't last. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was reviewing staffing schedules for the following month. Mom's ringtone, A Mother's Love by Jim Brickman, which she'd programmed herself, interrupted my concentration. "June, thank God you answered. We have an emergency." My hand tightened on the phone. "Is Dad okay?" "Oh, he's fine. It's the house. The inspector came today for our insurance renewal, and he says if we don't fix the foundation immediately, they'll cancel our policy. We could lose everything." Foundation issues in a house I'd paid to maintain for years. What exactly did the inspector say? Something about cracks and settling and water damage. I didn't understand half of it, but he said it's serious. $20,000 serious. 20,000. The number hung between us like a sword. "Did you get a second opinion?" "There's no time. He said we have 30 days or the insurance company drops us. Without insurance, the mortgage company could foreclose. June, we could be homeless." Homeless. In the $600,000 house I'd been paying for. "Email me the inspection report," I said already, knowing I'd regret it. "I'll look at it tonight." "You're an angel. I told your father you'd know what to do." The report arrived within minutes, as if she'd been waiting with her finger on the send button. I read through it carefully, my medical training useful for parsing technical language. The foundation did show some settling normal for a house built in 1992. The recommended repairs were preventative, not emergency. The insurance threat was real but standard. Companies often used renewal periods to demand upgrades. I called 3 contractors that night describing the issues. Their estimates ranged from $8,000 to $12,000 for necessary repairs. $20,000 would gold plate the foundation. "It's definitely not an emergency," the third contractor, Mike, told me. That settling's been happening for years, but insurance companies love to strong-arm homeowners during renewals. I could do the essential repairs for $10,000, have it done in 2 weeks. $10,000. Still a massive sum, but half what Mom had quoted. I saved Mike's number and opened my laptop to check my accounts. The new savings account held $1,200. My checking had enough for rent and utilities. The promotion had helped, but recovering from Dad's fake emergency had drained me. I could take out a personal loan. My credit was excellent, interest rates reasonable. But the thought of going into debt for their house made my stomach churn. The next morning, I drove to their house before my shift. Dad was in the garage organizing tools he never used. Mom waited in the kitchen with coffee and her most pitiful expression. "Did you read the report?" She clutched her mug like a life preserver. "I did, and I called contractors. The repairs can be done for $10,000, not $20,000. "Oh," relief flooded her face. "That's wonderful, so you can handle it." "I didn't say that. I said the cost is lower than you thought." Her face fell. "But June, you have to help us. Where else would we get $10,000? "From the equity in your house, a home improvement loan, your savings." "We can't take on debt at our age," Dad said, joining us. He'd clearly been listening from the garage. "And our savings, well, things have been tight." Tight, while funding Madison's lifestyle. Speaking of Madison, I said, "Where is she? This affects her too." "She had a very important meeting with a potential sponsor," Mom said quickly. "A teeth whitening company wants to partner with her." "Ah, how much does that pay?" Silence. "It's about exposure," Mom finally said. "Building her platform." "So nothing. It pays nothing." "June, don't be negative. Your sister is building a career." "While I'm being asked to pay $10,000 to fix the house she lives in for free?" The words hung in the air like an accusation. Dad's face flushed while Mom's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "This is our family home," Dad said sternly. "Where you grew up. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "It means everything, which is why I've paid the mortgage for 5 years." "We appreciate that." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you expect it. Like it's my job to solve every problem with my checkbook." Mom started crying right on cue. "I can't believe you're being so cruel. We could lose our home." "You won't lose it if you pay for the repairs yourselves." "With what money?" Dad's voice rose. "You think we're rich. You think we have thousands lying around." I think you have options you're not exploring because asking me is easier. The front door burst open and Madison swept in, carrying shopping bags and radiating excitement. "Family meeting without me, Rude." She dropped into a chair, designer sunglasses still perched on her head. "What are we discussing?" "The house needs foundation repairs," I said flatly. $10,000 worth. "Oh, good. I actually wanted to talk about the house, too." Madison pulled out her phone, scrolling rapidly. "I've been accepted into this amazing content creator house in Los Angeles. It's like a collective where influencers live and create together. Career-changing opportunity." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Mom beamed through her tears. "But here's the thing," Madison continued. "I need to show financial stability to get in. So I was thinking once June fixes the foundation, maybe we could do a full renovation. Update the kitchen, knock out some walls, create a proper studio space. Then I could rent it out when I move to LA, use the income to show I'm financially responsible." I stared at her. "You want me to pay for foundation repairs on a house you plan to renovate and rent out?" "Not just foundation repairs. A full upgrade. I've already talked to a designer. She says we could increase the value by at least $100,000 with the right improvements." Well, you know what I mean. Think of it as an investment. An investment in a house I don't own." Madison rolled her eyes. "God, June, why are you being so selfish? This is my career we're talking about." "Your career that makes no money." "Yet, it doesn't make money yet." She turned to our parents. "Tell her how important this is." Mom and Dad exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations perfected over 34 years of marriage. "Maybe," Dad said slowly, "we could do both. Fix the foundation and do some updates for Madison's future. It would really help her career," Mom added, "and increase our home value." "Our home value," I repeated. "The home you're leaving entirely to Madison." Another silence, heavier this time. "How did you—" Mom started, then stopped. "Does it matter? The point is, you want me to invest tens of thousands of dollars in a property I'll never inherit." "You don't need an inheritance," Madison said, as if explaining to a child. "You have a good job. I need the security." "I have a good job because I worked for it. 2 jobs, actually, while you've been playing influencer on my dime." "Your dime?" Madison's voice pitched higher. "I've never taken money from you." "No, you take it from Mom and Dad who get it from me. It's money laundering for the entitled." "June," Mom gasped. "That's a terrible thing to say." "Is it? Let's do the math. I pay their bills, they pay your bills. I'm funding your lifestyle with extra steps." Madison stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You know what? I don't need this negativity. When I'm famous and successful, we'll see who's bitter then." She stormed out, but not before adding, "And yes, I did talk to contractors. We could do the whole renovation for $50,000. Think about it. $50,000. From 10 to 20 to 50, the number climbing with each conversation. "She's just passionate about her future," Mom said weakly. "Her future in my past," I muttered. "What?" "Nothing. Look, I need to go to work. Actual work that pays actual money. But the foundation, get a loan, sell some things, ask Madison to contribute from her teeth-whitening windfall. But I'm not taking on debt for a house you've already decided isn't mine." I left them sitting at their kitchen table, probably strategizing their next approach. The drive to work was a blur of rain and regret. Regret that I'd answered the phone. Regret that I'd trained them so well to see me as their solution. Regret that love in our family had become so transactional. At the hospital, I threw myself into my shift with desperate energy. Here, problems had solutions that didn't require my bank account. A 6-year-old with pneumonia responded to antibiotics. An infant's fever broke after careful monitoring. Parents thanked me with tears of relief that had nothing to do with money. During my break, I sat in the cafeteria with my phone off, enjoying the silence. No texts about foundations or renovations or influencer houses, just peace. Rough day. Dr. Martinez sat across from me with her lunch. "Family stuff," I admitted. "Ah." She unwrapped her sandwich thoughtfully. "Let me guess. They need money." How did you know? Because you have that look, the one that says, I'm solving everyone's problems but my own. She took a bite, chewing slowly. Want some unsolicited advice? Sure. Stop. Just stop. They'll figure it out or they won't, but either way, it's not your responsibility. They're my parents. And you're their daughter, not their emergency fund. There's a difference. That night, I went home to 17 missed calls and twice as many texts. The family group chat had exploded with messages ranging from guilt trips to renovation ideas. Madison had created a Pinterest board for the house updates. Mom had forwarded emails from contractors, each, quote, higher than the last. Dad had sent a single message, disappointed in your selfishness. I archived the entire conversation without reading most of it. Instead, I updated my spreadsheet, adding the renovation scheme to my growing documentation. The ask had evolved from foundation repairs to a full renovation to support Madison's influencer dreams, none of which I would benefit from. The entitlement was breathtaking in its scope. My laptop dinged with an email. Mike the contractor following up on our conversation. His quote was still $10,000 for necessary repairs, but he'd added a note. I sensed you might be dealing with family pressure. If it helps, I can write a report stating the repairs aren't immediately critical. Might buy you some time to figure things out. I smiled the first genuine smile all day, a stranger showing more consideration than my own family. Thank you, I typed back. Please send that report. I'll handle this situation differently. Differently meant not handling it at all. Let them figure out their foundation, their renovation dreams, their financial reality without my checkbook as a crutch. I was done being their solution to problems they created. My phone buzzed with one final text from Madison. FYI, I measured your old room. It would make a perfect walk-in closet for my influencer wardrobe. Thanks in advance for making this happen, sis. My old room, where I'd studied for my nursing boards, planned my future, dreamed of the life I was building, reduced to storage for Madison's pretensions funded by my sacrifice. I turned off my phone and went to bed, rain pattering against windows in the apartment I paid for with money I earned at the job I'd worked to achieve. Tomorrow would bring new messages, new guilt, new elaborate schemes to separate me from my savings. But tonight, I slept, knowing I'd finally said no. The foundation could crumble, Madison's influencer dreams could collapse, and their disappointment could echo through that $600,000 house. It wasn't my foundation to fix anymore. The drive back from the lawyer's office felt like navigating through a dream or a nightmare. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my 8-year-old Honda Civic, the car I'd never upgraded, because family always needed something more urgent than my comfort. 28 years of being Howard and Catherine Matthews' daughter, and my inheritance was a single line of cruelty to June, who has already received enough. I pulled into the first parking lot. I found a half-empty strip mall with a defunct Blockbuster and a nail salon that had seen better days. The engine ticked as it cooled, keeping time with my racing thoughts. Already received enough. What had I received exactly? The privilege of paying their bills, the honor of sacrificing my 20s to their comfort, the joy of watching Madison live the life I funded. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I'd left the office. 14 missed calls from Mom, 8 from Dad, 23 texts from Madison. I finally looked at the most recent. June, stop being dramatic. When are you sending this month's payment? The mortgage company doesn't care about your feelings. Mom. The mortgage company, for the house they'd left entirely to Madison along with everything else. I opened my contact list and scrolled to Sarah Chen, my best friend since nursing school, and now a financial advisor who'd tried repeatedly to talk sense into me about my family's situation. She answered on the second ring. June, everything okay? You sound... They left me nothing. The words came out flat, emotionless. The will reading was today. Everything goes to Madison. The house, the investments, Mom's jewelry, everything. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, but also I'm not surprised. I am. I laughed, but it sounded broken. I'm an idiot, but I'm surprised. Some part of me actually thought, God, Sarah, I've given them everything. I know. Can you come over? We should talk. I can't. I have to. I stopped. What did I have to do? Send the mortgage payment for a house I'd never inherit. Cover the utilities for Madison's future content creation studio. Actually, yes, I'll be there in 20. Sarah lived in a converted loft in the Pearl District, the kind of place I dreamed of affording before family obligations consumed every spare dollar. She met me at the door with a glass of wine and a hug that nearly broke my composure. "Tell me everything," she said, guiding me to her couch. I recounted the meeting, the lawyer's careful words, my parents' refusal to make eye contact, Madison's immediate plans for renovation. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my glass. "Show me your bank statements," she said when I finished. "What?" "Your bank statements. All of them. It's time we calculate exactly what this has cost you." I pulled up my banking app with trembling fingers. Sarah had her laptop ready, creating a spreadsheet with practiced efficiency. For the next 2 hours, we went through everything. Every transfer, every check, every Venmo payment to Madison. The numbers accumulated like evidence in a crime I'd been too blind to see. $347,000, Sarah finally announced. "In 8 years, you've given them $347,000. The number hit like a physical blow. That's a house. That's my house. That's your life, June. The trips you didn't take, the opportunities you passed up, the security you sacrificed. For what? For family." The words tasted bitter now. "That's not family, that's exploitation." My phone rang. Mom again. This time I answered, putting it on speaker so Sarah could hear. "Finally, June. What is this nonsense? You can't just storm out and ignore us." "I didn't storm out. I left after the meeting ended." "Without saying goodbye, without discussing the mortgage payment, it's due in 3 days. Then Madison should pay it. After all, it's her house." Silence. Then, "You know your sister doesn't have that kind of money." "Neither do I." "Don't be ridiculous. You just got promoted. You're a head nurse now." "Which means I make enough to support myself, not an entire family that's written me out of their will." June Elizabeth Matthews. Dad's voice boomed in the background. "You get over here right now. We need to discuss this like adults." "No." The word hung there simple and final. I'd never said it so baldly before. "No." Mom's voice climbed octaves. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no. I'm not coming over. I'm not discussing anything. And I'm not paying your mortgage." "Then we'll lose the house." "You'll lose Madison's house. Take it up with her." I hung up before they could respond. Sarah squeezed my hand, her expression mixing pride and concern. "That was brave," she said. "That was terrifying." I drained my wine glass. "They're going to lose it, aren't they? Without my money, they can't maintain that lifestyle." "Let me run some numbers." Sarah turned back to her laptop, fingers flying over keys. "Based on what you've told me about their finances, yeah, they're in trouble. They've been living on roughly 60% more than their fixed income for years. You've been the difference between comfort and catastrophe." "And Madison?" Sarah snorted. "Madison's influencer income wouldn't cover a phone bill. She's been playing entrepreneur with your money." My phone exploded with notifications. I glanced at the screen to see Madison had started a group text with extended family, painting me as the villain who was letting our parents become homeless. The messages poured in from aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. "June, is this true? You're abandoning your parents." "Aunt Linda. Family helps family. Shame on you. Uncle Robert. Maybe if you weren't so selfish, they wouldn't have had to leave everything to Madison. Cousin Patricia." That last one made me laugh dark and bitter. The circular logic of dysfunction. I was selfish for not giving more, so they punished me by ensuring I'd inherit nothing, which justified my selfishness. "Block them all," Sarah advised, "at least for now." Instead, I typed one message to the group. "I've financially supported Mom and Dad for 8 years while Madison lived rent-free. I've paid their mortgage, utilities, groceries, and repairs. Total $347,000. They've left me nothing in their will because I've already received enough. If you're so concerned about family helping family, feel free to take over the payments. The mortgage is $2,400 month, utilities average $500, groceries $400. Madison's credit card bills are extra. Let me know who's taking which expense. June. Then I muted the conversation. That felt good, I admitted to Sarah. It should. You just set a boundary. First of many, I hope. We ordered Thai food and spent the evening planning my financial recovery. Without the drain of my family's expenses, I could actually save money, build an emergency fund, maybe even consider buying my own place. You could have been a homeowner by now, Sarah said gently. That promotion money could go toward your future, not their present. I know. The grief of it sat heavy in my chest. I think that's what hurts most. Not the will, I mean that stings, but realizing how much I've sacrificed for people who see me as a resource, not a daughter. When did it start, the financial support? I thought back. Right after nursing school. Dad mentioned they were struggling with the mortgage. Just a temporary help, he said. A few months while they got back on their feet. 8 years of temporary. And Madison was in college then. They said once she graduated, things would be easier. I laughed without humor. She graduated 3 years ago, still waiting for things to get easier. My phone rang, an unknown number, but the voicemail was immediately familiar. Ms. Matthews. This is Patricia Brennan. I'm sorry to call after hours, but your parents have asked me to reach out. They're concerned about some statements you made after our meeting. They'd like to discuss possible amendments to the will. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. I played it for Sarah. They're panicking, she observed. Reality is setting in. Should I call back? Absolutely not. Let them sit with their choices. Besides, what could they offer you now, a token inheritance in exchange for continued financial support? That's not love, June. That's negotiation. My phone lit up again. This time a text from Madison with a photo attached. She'd taken a selfie in front of the house, fake tears streaming down her face. The caption, about to lose my childhood home because my sister cares more about money than family. Heartbroken family drama, help. She's trying to crowdfund your guilt, Sarah said, disgusted. How very influencer of her. The comments were already pouring in from her followers, offering prayers and calling me heartless. Someone had started a GoFundMe that had raised $37 in the first hour. $37, I repeated. She needs $2,400 for the mortgage, and her devoted followers have raised $37. Reality is a harsh teacher, Sarah observed. We talked until midnight planning my next steps. Cancel any automatic transfers. Close the joint account Mom had convinced me to open for emergencies. Change my beneficiaries on everything. Small actions that felt monumentally significant. You know they'll escalate, Sarah warned as I prepared to leave. This is just the beginning. When the mortgage comes due and you don't pay, they'll pull out every manipulation tactic in the book. I know. I hugged her tightly. But I'm done being their solution. Madison wanted the house so badly she can figure out how to pay for it. And if they lose it? I thought about the Victorian on Elm Street where I'd grown up in the shadow of Madison's brightness. Where I'd done homework at the kitchen table while she had dance lessons I now knew I'd eventually pay for. Where love had been portioned out based on who needed protection and who could provide it. Then they lose it, I said finally. And maybe for the first time in her life, Madison will have to solve her own problems. Driving home through the quiet Portland streets, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years possibility. My next paycheck would be mine. My promotion raise wouldn't disappear into their accounts. My future could be about my choices, not their needs. The phone rang again as I parked. Dad this time. I let it go to voicemail but listened before going inside. June, this is your father. I'm disappointed in you. After everything we've done, everything we've given you, this is how you repay us by abandoning your family. Your mother is beside herself. Madison's talking about having to get a real job. Is that what you want, your sister working some minimum wage position because you're too selfish to help call me back? We need to fix this before it's too late. Madison getting a real job, the horror, the impossibility, the thing millions of 25-year-olds did every day without their older sisters subsidizing their dreams. I deleted the voicemail and went inside. Tomorrow would bring new crises, new guilt trips, new attempts to pry open my wallet. But tonight, for the first time in 8 years, I went to bed knowing exactly where I stood in my family's priorities. Dead last with a bank account to prove it. 3 days after the will reading, I sat in my car outside my parents' house with a manila folder that felt heavier than it should. Inside were 8 years of bank statements, canceled checks, and Venmo receipts. $347,000 worth of evidence that June has already received enough was the cruelest fiction my parents had ever crafted. The morning was crisp for early June, the kind of perfect Portland weather that usually lifted my spirits. Today it felt like the universe mocking my situation. Madison's BMW, the one she'd leased with money that mysteriously appeared in her account each month, sat in the driveway next to Dad's truck and Mom's sedan, a full family assembly. They didn't know I was coming. The past 3 days had been a symphony of increasingly frantic messages I hadn't answered. Mom's texts had evolved from demanding to pleading to vaguely threatening. Dad left voicemails that alternated between disappointment and rage. Madison had started a TikTok series called When Family Betrays You that had gained her 50 new followers and $0 toward the mortgage that was now past due. I knocked on the door I'd once entered freely, the sound echoing like a judge's gavel. Mom answered, her face cycling through surprise, relief, and calculation in the span of seconds. June. Oh, thank God, we've been so worried. She reached to embrace me, but I stepped back, keeping the folder between us like a shield. I'm not here for a reunion. I'm here to talk about money. Her face hardened. That's all you care about now, money. Funny how it only became crass when I stopped providing it. I pushed past her into the house that smelled like coffee and the lavender potpourri she'd used since I was 12. Everything looked the same. The family photos lining the hallway Madison featured prominently, me relegated to the edges. The furniture I'd helped pay to reupholster the new smart TV Madison had convinced them she needed for content creation. They were assembled in the living room like they'd been waiting. Dad in his recliner trying to project patriarchal authority. Madison curled on the couch with her phone outfit camera ready in case this became content. And in the corner, a man I didn't recognize. Tall, athletic, wearing designer clothes that screamed new money. Who's this? I asked. This is Trevor, Madison said, not looking up from her screen. My boyfriend. He's a financial investigator and he says what you're doing might be illegal. Elder abuse or something. Trevor had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't exactly say, financial investigator, I interrupted. Perfect. Then you'll appreciate these. I opened my folder spreading 8 years of financial records across the coffee table with the precision of a blackjack dealer. Check copies, bank statements, online transfers, everything highlighted and annotated in my neat handwriting. January 2016. I began my voice clinical. First mortgage payment, $2,400. February 2016, mortgage plus utilities, $2,900. March 2016. We get it, Dad growled. You've helped with some bills. Some bills. I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet room. $347,000 over 8 years. That's not help, Dad. That's a salary. That's my entire 20s dissolved into your bank account. Nobody asked you to, Madison started. February 2018. I continued pulling out a specific statement. $3,000 for Madison's spring break trip to Cabo. March 2018, $1,500 for her photography equipment. April 2018, $800 for her yoga teacher training that she attended exactly twice. Madison's face flushed. That was for my career. Your career that's earned how much exactly? Influence isn't always about money. No, it's about my money. Which is why you're here with your financial investigator boyfriend instead of paying the mortgage on the house you're inheriting. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Actually, I should probably stay, I said firmly. Since you're investigating financial abuse, you should see this. I pulled out the most damning evidence, Mom's credit card statements showing Madison's shopping sprees, the ones they'd hidden, while crying poverty to me. Trevor leaned forward, his expression shifting from skepticism to interest. These charges, he said slowly, they're all luxury items, while simultaneously requesting support for necessities. Bingo, I said. Madison got a new MacBook Pro while I was told Dad might lose his medications without my help. That's different, Mom protested. Madison needed that computer for her work. Her work that generates no income but somehow requires thousands in equipment, courses, retreats, and clothes. Fascinating business model. Trevor was now examining the papers with professional interest. This is extensive documentation. You've been tracking this for how long? I started keeping detailed records 2 years ago when I realized something was off. Before that, it's reconstructed from bank statements. Why does that matter? Madison snapped at her boyfriend. She gave the money willingly. It matters, Trevor said quietly, because this could be considered financial exploitation, taking advantage of someone's sense of duty while hiding assets and spending. He looked at me with something like respect. You could have a legal case here. The room went silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner, another item I'd helped save from repossession. Legal case. Mom's voice cracked. June, you wouldn't. We're family. Family, I repeated. Let's talk about family. Family is supposed to be reciprocal, mutual support, not one person bleeding out while others count the drops. We gave you life, Dad roared, finally finding his voice. We raised you, educated you. I paid for my own education with loans I'm still paying off. Loans I could have cleared by now if I hadn't been funding your lifestyle. Our lifestyle. We live modestly. I gestured around the room. $600,000 house, 2 car payments, country club membership, Madison's entire existence. That's not modest, Dad. That's comfortable. And it's been subsidized by your daughter who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment and drives a car with 200,000 miles on it. You chose to help, Mom said weakly. We never forced you. No, you just made me responsible for your well-being from the moment I got my first paycheck. Do you remember what you said, just a few months while we get back on our feet? That was 8 years ago. Madison finally put down her phone. Okay, so you helped out, so what? That doesn't mean you get to destroy our lives now. I'm not destroying anything. I'm stepping back. If your lives collapse without my money, what does that say about the lives you've built? It says you're selfish, she spat. It says you care more about numbers on paper than your own family. These numbers on paper represent my labor, my exhaustion, my sacrifice. Every dollar here is an hour I worked a shift. I took an opportunity I passed up because family needed it more. Trevor cleared his throat. Can I ask a question? What was the plan here, long term? Everyone looked at him. He continued, you're leaving everything to Madison in the will, but you're dependent on June for daily expenses. What happens when you're gone? How does Madison maintain a house she can't afford? I'll be successful by then, Madison said defensively. When you're 25, you've been building this influencer career for 4 years with no monetization. At what point do you accept it's a hobby, not a job? Madison's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'd never seen her speechless before. That's not... Trevor, you're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side, which is why I'm asking questions you should have asked yourself years ago. He turned to my parents, and you two enabled this. You've created a situation where one daughter is the bank and the other is the perpetual child. What did you think would happen? Dad's face was purple now. What happens is June does her duty to this family. My duty. I stood gathering my papers. My duty was to launch my own life, to build my career, save for my future, maybe have relationships that weren't squeezed into the margins of your needs. Instead, I've been an ATM with a pulse, and you had the audacity to write in your will that I've already received enough. You have received enough, Mom cried. Love, support, a good upbringing. Madison received the same upbringing. Why doesn't she have to pay for it? Because she needs. What protection? Coddling. An eternal childhood funded by her sister. I shook my head. I'm done being your solution. Madison, the house is yours. Figure out how to pay for it. I can't. She actually stamped her foot like the child she'd never stopped being. You know I can't. Then sell it, get a job, marry rich. I don't care. It's not my problem anymore. June, please. Mom stood reaching for me again. The mortgage company is already calling. We could lose everything. You could lose Madison's inheritance. There's a difference. Where will we live? In the house, if Madison figures out adulting. In an apartment, if she doesn't. Millions of people downsize in retirement. You're not special. This is because of the will, Dad said suddenly. You're punishing us because we tried to provide for Madison. No, Dad. This is because I finally understand my place in this family. I'm not a daughter. I'm a resource. And resources can be depleted. I headed for the door, my folder of evidence tucked under my arm. Behind me, chaos erupted. Mom crying, Dad yelling, Madison shrieking about unfairness. But it was Trevor's voice that followed me. June, wait. I paused at the door. He jogged over, pulling out a business card. I'm actually a forensic accountant, he said quietly. I investigate financial crimes. What's happening here? It's not criminal, but it's not right either. If you need help protecting your assets going forward, call me. Why would you help me? You're dating Madison. He glanced back at the living room where Madison was now performing hysteria for her phone camera. I've been dating her for 2 months. I thought she was an entrepreneur. Now I see she's... Well, I see what she is, and what you've been to this family. He paused. That spreadsheet you showed in my profession, we call that evidence of financial abuse, emotional manipulation for monetary gain. You could probably sue. I don't want to sue. I just want to be free. Then be free, but keep those records. And maybe... He hesitated. Maybe think about talking to a therapist who specializes in financial trauma. This kind of long-term exploitation leaves marks. Financial trauma. I'd never considered that my exhaustion might have a clinical name. Thank you, I said, meaning it. And good luck with... I gestured toward the living room where Madison's voice had reached supersonic frequencies. Yeah, I think that's over. I don't date people who treat their siblings like ATMs. He smiled ruefully. Besides, apparently she's about to be homeless, not really the successful entrepreneur she portrayed. I left him standing in the doorway and drove away from my childhood home for what might be the last time. In my rearview mirror, I could see Mom on the porch, still crying. Part of me wanted to turn around to apologize, to write just one more check. But Sarah was right. Resources could be depleted, and I'd finally hit empty. My phone started ringing before I reached the end of the street. I let it ring, focusing on the road ahead and the future that suddenly seemed possible now that I wasn't financing everyone else's present. $347,000. That's what love had cost me in this family, but freedom. Freedom was priceless. The 1st of July arrived with a heat wave that turned Portland into an oven. I'd maintained radio silence for a month, changing my phone number and blocking email addresses, with the methodical precision I usually reserved for medication schedules. The freedom felt strange, like wearing new shoes that hadn't yet molded to my feet. For the first time in 8 years, my entire paycheck deposited into my account and stayed there. I'd use the windfall to pay off my car, build an emergency fund, and even splurge on a new work wardrobe that didn't look like I'd shopped exclusively at discount stores. My colleagues noticed the change, commenting on how relaxed I seemed. If only they knew the price of that relaxation-complete estrangement from the family that had bled me dry. The text that broke through my defenses came from an unknown number on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost deleted it unread, but the preview caught my eye. Mom wanted me to tell you the house is in foreclosure. Aunt Linda, Mom's sister who'd stood by while I funded everyone's lives, now suddenly concerned enough to track down my new number. I didn't respond, but the seed was planted. Foreclosure. They'd actually failed to pay the mortgage on the house I'd sustained for years. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part, the part trained from birth to be the responsible one, felt the familiar pull of guilt. That evening, curiosity got the better of me. I created a fake social media account and looked up Madison's profiles. What I found was a masterclass in delusion. Her Instagram featured a series of increasingly frantic posts. The carefully curated influencer aesthetic had devolved into chaos, blurry selfies with tear-smudged makeup, rants about family betrayal and surviving narcissistic abuse. The comments section was a battlefield between her few remaining supporters and people who'd apparently been following the drama since the beginning. Maybe get a job instead of begging, one commenter suggested. Madison's response: "You don't understand the trauma of having your support system ripped away. I'm literally homeless. Literally homeless while living in a $600,000 house." The math of melodrama. But it was her latest video that truly stunned me. She'd set up her ring light in what looked like the kitchen, her face puffy from crying, and launched into a 20-minute monologue about her situation. "So like the bank is literally taking our house." She began voice wavering between genuine distress and performance. "My parents are too old to work, and my sister, who makes like so much money as a nurse, just abandoned us. Like who does that? Who lets their family become homeless?" She went on to detail their financial situation with stunning shamelessness. The mortgage payment that I'd covered for years, the utilities also me, the insurance me again. But in her telling, these were simply bills that existed, not obligations I'd shouldered while she played at being an entrepreneur. "I've tried everything," she continued. "I even started a GoFundMe, but people are so mean. They keep asking why I don't have a job. Hello, I'm an influencer. That is my job." The GoFundMe had raised $212. I did the math. At that rate, she'd need approximately 11 months to raise one mortgage payment. The house would be sold at auction long before her followers ponied up any real money. I closed the app, but the image of Madison's tear-stained face lingered. Was I being cruel? Was this the line between boundary setting and revenge? My answer came the next day when Sarah forwarded me something with a simple note: "You need to see this." Madison had escalated. She'd created a TikTok that went viral in the worst possible way. In it, she gave a tour of the house my sister is stealing from my elderly parents, complete with sob story narration and strategic shots of family photos. But she'd made a crucial mistake. In her emotional state, she'd shown too much. The granite countertops I'd paid to install, the new appliances I'd bought when theirs broke, the renovation work I'd funded. And in the background of one shot, clear as day, sat her collection of designer handbags on a custom shelf. The comments were brutal. "Those are $3K plus bags each. Sell them and pay your mortgage." Elderly parents. "They look 60 tops. Why can't they work?" "Wait, your sister paid for all those renovations and gets nothing in the will." "This isn't the flex you think it is, sweetie." Someone had done the math on her visible belongings and estimated at least $40,000 in luxury goods. The tide of public opinion had turned against her so hard it created a riptide. That evening, Mom called from yet another unknown number. This time I answered. "June." Her voice sounded older, fragile, in a way that might have been genuine. "Sweetheart, it's Mom." "I know who it is." We need to talk. Really talk. Not about money," she added quickly. "Just, can you come by, please?" "No." The silence stretched between us, filled with years of dysfunction. "We're going to lose the house. she said finally. The notices are posted on the door. The neighbors are talking. Your father won't leave his chair. And Madison's making TikToks. You saw Mom's voice cracked. She means well, but she doesn't understand how it looks. It looks like what it is. A 25-year-old woman who's never worked a day in her life crying because her sister won't subsidize her lifestyle anymore. That's not, she's trying June. She applied for jobs. Really? Where? Another silence. She says she's applied, Mom amended, online for remote positions in social media. Of course she has. June, please, just one more month, just to give us time to figure things out. Your father could have another episode from the stress. Dad's fake heart condition won't work twice, Mom. It wasn't fake, he was hospitalized. For a panic attack that he played up for sympathy and financial support. I spoke to the nurses, remember, I am a nurse. You're also a daughter. The fragility cracked, revealing the steel underneath. Our daughter, and you're letting us rot. I'm letting you experience consequences. There's a difference. Consequences for what? For loving your sister, for trying to provide for both our children, for treating me like a bank account instead of a person, for taking $347,000 from me while planning to leave me nothing, for enabling Madison's delusions instead of teaching her to be an adult. We did our best. No, Mom. You did what was easiest. It was easier to ask me for money than to tell Madison to get a job. Easier to let me sacrifice than to make her uncomfortable. Easier to plan your will around who you liked more rather than who supported you. We don't like her more. Then why does she inherit everything? Because she needs it. There it was. The truth laid bare. Need trumped contribution. Helplessness rewarded while responsibility was punished. Then let her need motivate her to figure it out, I said. The house is hers after all, or will be if she can save it. You're really going to let us be homeless. I'm really going to let you figure out your own housing situation like millions of other adults do every day. That's not cruelty, Mom. That's normal. This isn't over, she said, the last attempt at threat. When you need us, I won't. I hung up before she could respond. The certainty in my voice surprised even me, but it was true. I'd learned to need them the way a swimmer learns to need an anchor, only when you want to drown. My phone immediately lit up with texts from Madison. I'd forgotten she probably had my new number, too. The messages came in rapid fire. How dare you hang up on Mom? She's crying because of you. I hope you're happy in your fancy apartment while we're homeless. You'll regret this when they're gone. I'm documenting everything for my followers. They'll see what kind of person you really are. BTW Trevor dumped me because of you. He said our family is toxic. I hope you're happy. That last one almost made me smile. Trevor, the unexpected voice of reason in the chaos. I wondered if he'd seen the viral TikTok and recognized the designer bags he'd probably helped pay for. Over the next week, the situation escalated exactly as predicted. Madison's social media became a slow-motion disaster, each post more desperate than the last. She tried selling her designer goods but balked at the offered prices, insisting they were worth more. She started a Patreon that gained 3 subscribers. She even attempted a car wash fundraiser that raised $43 and ended with her crying on Instagram Live about the indignity of manual labor. The foreclosure notices progressed from warnings to final notices. Dad finally emerged from his chair long enough to call me at work, somehow getting through the hospital switchboard. You've made your point, he said without preamble. We get it. You're angry about the will. Fine, we'll change it. Equal distribution. Just help us save the house. I don't want your money, Dad. I never did. Then what do you want? The question hung there fundamental and years too late. I wanted to be seen as more than a resource. I wanted love that didn't come with a price tag. I wanted parents who valued what I contributed instead of just expecting more. We do value. No, you valued my utility. There's a difference. So that's it. 8 years of help and then nothing. 8 years of exploitation and then freedom. Perspective matters, Dad. He hung up on me the first time in my life he'd ever done so. It felt like a period at the end of a very long sentence. The final act came 2 weeks later. Sarah called me at work, her voice careful. "June, there's something online you should see before someone else tells you." Madison had gone nuclear. In a last-ditch effort to save the house, she'd started a documentary on YouTube called "When Family Abandons You, a Survival Story." The first episode was 45 minutes of carefully edited manipulation, painting me as a wealthy, heartless sister who'd abandoned her struggling family out of greed. But the internet, as always, had its own ideas. Within hours, someone had done a deep dive into our family's public records. They'd found the will filing the property values, Madison's spending habits, even some of my old social media posts from years ago, mentioning working double shifts to help family. The truth laid out in devastating detail turned Madison's narrative on its head. The video's comment section became a massacre. "So, your sister paid your bills for a decade and you left her nothing, and she's the villain." This girl really thought we'd side with her lounging by the pool while her sister worked 2 jobs. "Someone call Netflix, this scammer needs a documentary made about her, not by her." Imagine being 25 and never having a job but thinking you deserve a free house. The video was pulled within 24 hours, but the damage was done. Madison had accidentally created her own public humiliation, archived forever in the depths of internet history. The house went to auction on the last Tuesday of July. I knew because Aunt Linda sent one final text. "Hope you're happy. They're loading the moving truck now." Was I happy? No. But I was free. And for the first time in my adult life, that was enough. I donated $2,000 to a local charity that helped families facing foreclosure. Families who hadn't spent decades exploiting their children. It felt like closing a circle, helping strangers who deserved it more than the family who demanded it. That night, I slept deeply in my small apartment, no longer waiting for the phone to ring with the next crisis I'd be expected to solve. Somewhere across the city, my parents were learning what life looked like without a safety net shaped like their eldest daughter. And Madison. She was about to discover that influence without income was just another word for unemployment. August crashed into Portland with record-breaking temperatures and the spectacular public collapse of Madison Matthews, would-be influencer. I watched it unfold from the safety of my new life, like rubbernecking at a highway accident you saw coming miles away. The documentary disaster had been pulled from YouTube, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots circulated on Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok, each platform adding its own layer of mockery. Someone had created a meme format from Madison's tearful face with captions like, "When you have to get a job at 25 and POV your sister won't pay your bills anymore." It went viral in ways her actual content never had. I learned about most of it through Sarah, who'd appointed herself my shield against direct contact while keeping me informed of the major developments. She showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning with coffee and her laptop, her expression mixing amusement and concern. "You need to see this," she said, settling on my couch. Madison's latest attempt at damage control? The GoFundMe page had been updated. Gone was the original sob story about family abandonment. In its place was a sprawling manifesto about surviving narcissistic abuse and rebuilding after trauma. She'd reframed herself as a victim of emotional manipulation, conveniently forgetting to mention the emotional manipulation had been entirely one-sided, just not in the direction she claimed. "Read the updates," Sarah instructed, scrolling down. The progression was fascinating in its desperation. Update warrants July 28th. "Thank you so much for your support. Every dollar helps as my family navigates this difficult time. We've raised $500 toward our $50,000 goal." Update 2. August. Susu. "Due to unexpected circumstances, we need to raise funds more quickly. Any amount helps, even $5 makes a difference." Update 3. August 5. Urgent. "We have 48 hours before we lose everything. Please share widely." Update for August 8. To those sending hate. "You don't know our story. To supporters, you're angels. Goal adjusted to $30,000. Update 5 August 12th. New goal $10,000, just enough to secure an apartment and basic necessities. The final total raised $847. Her follower count in dollar form. But here's the best part, Sarah said, clicking to another tab. Someone found her LinkedIn. I nearly choked on my coffee. Madison had created a LinkedIn profile, something she'd sworn was for corporate drones just months ago. Her title, CEO and founder at Madison Matthews Lifestyle Brand. CEO of what I managed between coughs. That's not even the best part. Look at her experience. Under her work history, she'd listed social media manager at Self-Employed 2019-present, brand ambassador at various companies, 2018-2019, content creator at YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, 2017-present, creative director at Family Business, 2016-2017. Family business, I read aloud. What family business? I think she means spending your money, Sarah said dryly. Her skills section was a masterpiece of delusion. Influence marketing, brand development, creative strategy, lifestyle curation, authentic storytelling, crisis management. Crisis management, I repeated. She should remove that one. But it was the recommendations that truly stunned. 3 people had actually vouched for her, all fellow influencers with equally phantom careers. Their endorsements read like satire. Madison brings unparalleled creativity to the digital space. Her eye for aesthetic is matched only by her business acumen. A visionary in the lifestyle sector. She actually got interviews, Sarah revealed, clicking to her email screenshots that someone had leaked. 3 companies called her in based on that fiction. The screenshots showed Madison's post-interview meltdowns. The marketing firm wanted me to start entry-level. I have 1,000 followers. Starbucks asked about my availability for morning shifts. Don't they know I'm a content creator? The social media agency wanted references from jobs. What kind of discrimination is this? I stared at the screen, trying to reconcile this person with the sister I'd supported for years. Had she always been this detached from reality, or had our family's enabling created this monster? There's more, Sarah said gently. She started a new TikTok series. The series was called Riches to Rags, a Former Heiress's Story. In it, Madison portrayed herself as someone who'd lost a vast inheritance through family betrayal. The fiction was so elaborate, it bordered on performance art. I used to have everything, she said in one video, sitting in what looked like a public park. A mansion designer, everything a trust fund. Then my toxic sister manipulated my parents into cutting me off. Now I'm rebuilding from nothing. The comments were predictably savage. Heiress, your sister was paying your bills while you played dress-up. Girl, you're not fallen nobility. You're just unemployed. This is what happens when participation trophies grow up. Someone call her sister and apologize. She deserves sainthood for putting up with this. But the real blow came when someone did a deep dive into our family's finances using public records. They posted a detailed breakdown. Parents' house purchased in 1992 for $120,000 worth $600,000 in 2024. Parents' combined income, $65,000 a year from pensions and Social Security. Madison's inheritance if she'd saved the house. One $600,000 property. Madison's actual assets. Whatever fit in her car. June's contributions over 8 years, $347,000. June's inheritance per the will, already received enough. June's actual assets. Whatever she earned and saved after supporting everyone. The math was laid out so starkly that even Madison's most devoted followers couldn't spin it. The heiress narrative collapsed under the weight of actual facts. But wait, Sarah said, barely suppressing laughter. It gets better or worse depending on your perspective. She pulled up a local news article, Portland family loses home after daughter's viral meltdown backfires. The reporter had done actual journalism, interviewing neighbors, reviewing property records, even getting a statement from the bank. The story that emerged wasn't about a heartless daughter abandoning elderly parents, but about a family that had lived beyond their means on one child sacrifice, while grooming another for perpetual dependence. Our former neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was quoted, "June was always working, always exhausted. She'd come by to check on her parents between shifts. Meanwhile, Madison would sunbathe by the pool talking about her career. We all wondered when that girl would get a job." The bank representative was diplomatically brutal. The mortgage hadn't been paid in 3 months. The previous 8 years of payments came from an account not belonging to the homeowners. When that support ended, no alternative payment arrangement was attempted until foreclosure proceedings were well underway. Madison had responded to the article with a 3-part TikTok series that only dug her hole deeper. She accused the reporter of bias, the neighbors of jealousy, and the bank of predatory practices. When someone pointed out that paying your mortgage wasn't predatory but mandatory, she blocked them and turned off comments. "She's spiraling," I observed, feeling an unexpected pang of, not sympathy exactly, but something adjacent to it. "She's experiencing reality for the first time," Sarah corrected. "It's like watching a hothouse flower meet winter." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I looked. "This is Trevor. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I thought you should know Madison is staying with a friend and applying for actual jobs now. The internet humiliation might have done what your family never could, forced her to grow up. Take care." I didn't respond, but I saved the number. Trevor, the unexpected ally in the chaos, letting me know the storm was passing. Later that evening, alone in my apartment that felt more like home every day, I allowed myself to check Madison's Instagram one last time. Her follower count had exploded to over 50,000. But they weren't fans. They were spectators at a circus waiting for the next act in her public breakdown. Her latest post was different. Gone were the ring lights and filters. She sat in someone else's kitchen, no makeup, looking exhausted. The caption was shorter than her usual novels. "Starting over, applied to 10 jobs today. Wish me luck." The comments were kinder than usual. "Growth looks good on you. Everyone starts somewhere. You got this. Maybe your sister did you a favor after all." That last comment had hundreds of likes. I closed the app and deleted it from my phone. Whatever Madison's journey looked like from here, I didn't need to watch it unfold. I'd played my part. First as enabler, then as enforcer of consequences. Now it was time to be nothing at all to them. Sarah texted later, "How are you feeling about all this?" I thought about it sitting in my small apartment that I paid for with money I earned wearing clothes I bought without guilt, planning a future that didn't include anyone else's crisis. "Free," I texted back. "I feel free." And for the first time since Madison's implosion began, I didn't immediately check to see if she'd posted anything new. Progress came in small steps, and that felt like a big one. The influencer dream was dead. But maybe Madison Matthews would be born from its ashes. Either way, it was no longer my responsibility to watch. My bank account was my own. My time was my own. My life was my own. And Madison, she was about to discover what everyone else already knew. That influence without substance was just noise, and the internet had already moved on to the next main character. Her 15 minutes were up. My life was just beginning. September arrived with an unexpected chill and a certified letter that would change everything. I'd just finished a particularly rewarding shift. We'd successfully treated a premature twin who'd been fighting respiratory issues. When I found the official-looking envelope wedged in my mailbox, the return address made my blood run cold. Internal Revenue Service. My hands trembled as I opened it in my apartment lobby, unable to wait until I reached my unit. The letter was dense with legal language, but the core message was clear: I was being audited. Specifically, the IRS was investigating substantial cash gifts made to my parents over the past 5 years that had been flagged as potentially unreported income. I sank onto the lobby bench, my mind racing. I'd kept meticulous records of every payment, but I'd never considered the tax implications for my parents. Had they been reporting my support as gifts, as income, at all? The answer came 3 days later when my new attorney, Patricia Wong, recommended by Sarah's firm, reviewed the documentation. "Your parents never reported any of it," she said, her expression professionally neutral, but her tone conveying disapproval. $347,000 in cash transfers over 8 years, and they didn't report a penny. The IRS wants to know why. "I didn't know they had to report it," I said weakly. "Gifts over $15,000 per year to any individual require tax filings. You are essentially giving them $30,000 to $40,000 annually. That's significant unreported income." "But it was for bills, not—" "The IRS doesn't care what it was for. They care that it wasn't reported." Patricia leaned back, studying me. "There's more. The investigation was triggered by something specific. Do you know what that might be?" I thought back over the past months of family drama, and then it hit me. Madison's GoFundMe. She claimed they were destitute, but the IRS could see large deposits in their accounts. Bingo. Your sister's very public begging campaign triggered a review that revealed years of unreported income. But here's where it gets interesting. They also found some questionable deductions. She pulled out another document. Your parents claimed Madison as a dependent running a home business. They wrote off part of the mortgage utilities, even groceries, as business expenses for her influencer career. Meanwhile, they were receiving unreported cash from you to pay those same bills. Is that fraud? It's definitely fraudulent. The question is whether it's criminal fraud or civil fraud. That depends on intent and the total amount involved. Patricia's expression grew more serious. "June, I need to ask you something directly. Did you know your parents were claiming these deductions while you paid their bills?" "No, God, no. I had no idea about any of this." "Good, because you could be implicated if you knew. As it stands, you're a witness, not a suspect. But your parents and Madison are in serious trouble." The next few weeks unfolded like a legal thriller I never wanted to star in. Patricia helped me organize every piece of documentation while the IRS investigation expanded. What started as an audit of my parents had spiraled into a full examination of Madison's business claims. Then came the knock on my door on a Thursday evening. I opened it to find Trevor standing in my hallway looking haggard. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Madison's been arrested." I let him in, too stunned to object. He collapsed on my couch, running his hands through his hair. "It's bad, June. Really bad. The IRS investigation led to something else. Madison's been selling courses." "Courses? How to become an influencer courses, build your brand workshops, monetize your life seminars, all online, all charging between $500 and $2,000. But she's not successful. What could she possibly teach?" "Nothing. That's the problem. She was selling false success using fake testimonials, inflated numbers. She claimed to make 6 figures from influencing. The FTC got involved." I poured us both water, my hands steady despite the chaos. "How much did she make from these courses?" "Around $80,000 over 2 years. $80,000! I nearly dropped the glass, while taking money from our parents and begging me for support. It gets worse. She never reported any of it as income, and some of the students are filing fraud charges because she used fabricated income screenshots and fake brand deals as proof of her success." "Where was she hiding $80,000? Trevor laughed bitterly. "Spending it as fast as it came in. Designer goods trips that BMW lease. She thought if she looked successful, she'd become successful. Instead, she just became a criminal." My phone rang, Patricia's name on the screen. "June, I just got word. The IRS is filing criminal charges against your parents and sister. Tax evasion fraud, false claims. They want you to testify." "Testify against my family." "As a witness to the financial structure. Your records are evidence. You can refuse, but they'll subpoena me anyway." "Exactly." I hung up and looked at Trevor, who'd clearly heard enough to understand. "I'm testifying too," he said quietly. "I found a lot of this during our relationship. I tried to warn her, but she said I didn't understand how influencer culture worked. Did you report her? No, but when the IRS came knocking, I couldn't lie. My reputation, my career. I had to tell the truth. The truth. Such a simple concept that my family had twisted into origami shapes of deception. The arrest made the news. Portland influencer charged with wire fraud and tax evasion ran in the local paper, complete with Madison's most glamorous Instagram photo juxtaposed against her mugshot. The contrast was striking. Filtered fantasy versus harsh reality. Mom called from yet another new number, her voice hysterical. "June, you have to help. They've arrested your sister. They're talking about arresting us too." "I know, Mom." "You know, then why aren't you here? We need bail money. We need a lawyer. You need to face the consequences of your actions." "Our actions? We didn't do anything. This is all a misunderstanding. You claim tax deductions for a fake business while taking unreported cash gifts. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud. We were just trying to help Madison. By committing federal crimes, we didn't think." "No, Mom, you didn't think. For the first time in your lives, you're facing consequences you can't pass on to me." "They want us to testify against each other," she whispered. "The prosecutor said if we cooperate against Madison, they might reduce our charges. How can they ask parents to turn on their child?" "The same way you turned on me," I said quietly, "easily when it benefits you." The line went silent except for her ragged breathing. "June, please, we'll lose everything." "You already lost everything when you lost the house. Now you're just losing the illusion that you could avoid responsibility." I hung up before she could respond. Trevor was still on my couch, looking like he'd aged years in months. "You know what the weird part is?" he said. "Madison still thinks she's the victim. Even in jail, she's talking about how this is a conspiracy against successful women." "Successful women pay their taxes," I observed. "Try telling her that." The next morning, I met with Patricia and the federal prosecutor assigned to the case. The conference room smelled of burnt coffee and legal pads. Across the table sat Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Martinez, a woman who looked like she'd seen every scam and sob story invented. "Ms. Matthews, thank you for coming. I understand this is difficult testifying against family." "I'm testifying to facts, not against anyone," I clarified. She smiled slightly. "I appreciate that distinction. Your documentation is comprehensive. Did you suspect fraud when you kept such detailed records?" "No. I started tracking everything to understand where my money was going. I never imagined it was funding tax fraud." "Your sister earned approximately $80,000 selling fraudulent courses while simultaneously claiming poverty online and taking money from your parents who were taking money from you. Were you aware of her course business?" "Not until this week." "Your parents claimed deductions totaling nearly $60,000 over 5 years for her business expenses, while that business generated no reported income. They also failed to report $347,000 in gifts from you. Did they ever discuss taxes with you?" "Never. I didn't assume anything. I just paid what they asked." Martinez nodded, making notes. "Your testimony will establish the money trail. We're not pursuing charges against you. You're clearly a victim here. But we need you to confirm the transfers and their stated purposes. What are they facing prison? Your parents, probably probation and massive fines if they cooperate. Your sister is looking at 5 to 7 years. Wire fraud is serious, especially crossing state lines with online courses." 5 to 7 years. Madison, who'd never worked a day, facing years in federal prison? "There's one more thing," Martinez added. "We've frozen their assets, but there aren't many. Your sister had $3,000 in various accounts. Your parents had $800. The designer goods are being seized, but won't cover a fraction of what's owed. They'll be in debt to the government for the rest of their lives." The numbers were pathetic. All that money flowing through their hands, and they'd saved nothing. As I left the federal building, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Someone had leaked Madison's arrest video. She was screaming about discrimination, demanding to speak to her followers, insisting this was all a mistake. The officers looked tired as they guided her into the squad car. Her designer outfit wrinkled her influence, evaporating with each frame. The comments were merciless but oddly supportive of me. Her sister paid $300,000 to support them, and they committed tax fraud. Jail isn't enough. June Matthews deserves a medal for not burning that house down herself. This is what happens when you enable adult children. Let this be a lesson. Madison really thought she could scam her way to success. Federal prison will be great content. That evening, I sat with Patricia to review my testimony. We went through every transfer, every plea for help, every sacrifice I'd made. Laid out in legal documents, it looked even worse than I'd imagined. Not just the money, but the pattern of exploitation disguised as family duty. "You know what strikes me?" Patricia said as we finished. "You never asked them for anything. In 8 years of supporting them, did you ever ask for help?" I thought about it. Once. When my car broke down in 2019, I asked if I could borrow theirs for a week. They said Madison needed it for a networking event that turned out to be brunch with friends. Patricia shook her head. "And you still kept paying?" "They're my parents." "No," she corrected. "They're people who happen to raise you. Parents don't do this to their children." As I drove home, I passed the courthouse where Madison was being held pending bail. Part of me wanted to visit to see if any recognition of reality had finally penetrated her delusions. But I kept driving. That impulse to save, to fix, to provide, it was what got me here in the first place. My phone rang as I parked. Aunt Linda again. "June, how could you testifying against your own family?" "I'm testifying to the truth, Aunt Linda. If that's against them, what does that say?" "It says you're bitter about the will and getting revenge." "The will has nothing to do with tax fraud. They did this to themselves." "Madison's in jail. Your parents are going to be arrested. This is destroying our family." "Our family was destroyed long before this. We just decorated the corpse and called it love." I hung up and blocked her number 2. My family tree was getting pruned down to nothing but dead branches needed cutting. Inside my apartment, I made dinner and ate in peaceful silence. Tomorrow would bring more drama. Parents' arrests, Madison's bail hearing, extended family choosing sides. But tonight, I sat with the strange comfort of truth, finally being told, even if it had taken federal prosecutors to drag it into the light. My phone buzzed with one final text from an unknown number. "This is your father. I hope you're satisfied. Your mother had a panic attack when they served the warrant. Your sister is in jail. You've destroyed us, all because you couldn't just keep being a good daughter. I wish we'd never had you." I read it twice, waiting for the pain that should have come with such words. Instead, I felt only relief. The mask had finally slipped completely. This was who they'd always been. I'd just been too busy paying their bills to see it. I archived the message and finished my dinner. Tomorrow, I'd testify to the truth of what being a good daughter had cost me. But tonight, I was just June eating a quiet meal in an apartment paid for with money no one could claim but me. The law had finally caught up with the Matthews family. Justice might be blind, but she could still count, and the numbers never lied. The federal courthouse in downtown Portland had never felt more imposing than on that gray October morning when I arrived to testify. My new life had developed a rhythm, work therapy, quiet evenings without crisis calls, but today dragged me back into the chaos I'd tried to leave behind. Patricia met me at the security checkpoint, her presence steady and professional. "Ready for this?" "Do I have a choice?" "You always have a choice, but the subpoena makes one option significantly less pleasant." Inside courtroom 4B, my family sat at separate defendant tables, like a fractured portrait. Mom and Dad with their court-appointed attorney looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. Madison at her own table with a lawyer who'd probably been paid with the last of her hidden course money, her influencer glow replaced by federal defendant pallor. They'd all been arrested 2 weeks after Madison, their mugshots making the rounds on social media with cruel efficiency. The Matthews family fraud had become a cautionary tale, dissected in YouTube videos and Reddit threads. Someone had even started selling T-shirts I supported my family and all I got was audited. I took my place at the witness stand, avoiding eye contact with any of them. The prosecutor, Jennifer Martinez, approached with a folder thick with evidence. State your name for the record. June Elizabeth Matthews. Ms. Matthews, what is your relationship to the defendants? Catherine and Howard Matthews are my parents. Madison Matthews is my younger sister. Can you describe your financial relationship with your family over the past 8 years? And so I did. Every payment, every sacrifice, every request framed as emergency. The Christmas money that went to Madison's business investments. The vacation fund drained for Dad's fake cardiac episode. The promotion celebration that became a renovation planning session. Did you ever receive anything in return for this support? Martinez asked. No, well, I paused, remembering. They gave me a photo album for my birthday. It was filled with pictures of me helping them. Someone in the gallery actually gasped. Did your parents ever discuss how they reported this financial support to the IRS? Never, I assumed. I didn't think about it. I was just trying to help. Let me direct your attention to Exhibit 47. The screen showed a tax return. This is your parents' 2019 filing. Do you see where they claimed Madison's bedroom as a home office? Yes. And were you paying the mortgage that year? Yes, $2,400 monthly. So they claimed deductions on a property you were paying for, apparently. Madison's lawyer objected but was overruled. The evidence was clear. Now, regarding your sister's business ventures, were you aware she was selling online courses? Not until recently. She always claimed she was building her brand needed time to monetize. I believed her. Martinez pulled up screenshots of Madison's course website. The landing page promised to teach students how to make 6 figures as an influencer, with testimonials from people who didn't exist and income screenshots that had been doctored. Did your sister ever make 6 figures as an influencer? According to bank records, she made less than $3,000 from legitimate sponsorships over 4 years. Yet she was selling courses claiming expertise she didn't have. Yes. And living a lifestyle funded by my parents, who were funded by me. The cross-examination from my parents' attorney was brutal but ineffective. He tried to paint me as bitter about the will, vengeful about being excluded. But the numbers spoke louder than any motivation he could assign. Isn't it true you're angry about inheriting nothing? I inherited nothing after giving everything. The anger seems justified. So this is revenge. This is truth. If truth feels like revenge to them, what does that say? Madison's attorney took a different approach, trying to establish that I'd enabled the fraud by continuing to pay despite knowing about their lifestyle. You saw your sister's designer goods, her trips, her BMW. Why did you keep giving money? Because my parents said they needed it for necessities. I trusted them. For 8 years, yes, that's what family does, or what I thought family did. And when did you stop trusting them? I thought about it. When I read the will stating I'd already received enough, that's when I realized I wasn't family to them. I was a resource. During a break, I made the mistake of going to the bathroom at the same time as Madison. She cornered me by the sinks, her eyes wild. How could you do this to us? To me, I'm facing prison, June, real prison. You committed real fraud, Madison. It was just marketing. Everyone exaggerates online. Exaggeration isn't using Photoshop to fake income. It isn't selling courses based on success you never achieved. That's fraud. I was building something. You never understood my vision. Your vision required my money and federal crimes. Maybe the problem isn't my understanding. She grabbed my arm as I tried to leave. They're saying 5 years minimum, 5 years. Do you know what that'll do to my follower count? I stared at her, genuinely amazed. You're facing federal prison and you're worried about followers. It's my career. Your career is why you're here. The bathroom door opened and a marshal looked in. "Everything okay here?" "Fine," I said, pulling free, "just explaining reality to someone who's never met it." The afternoon brought more evidence. Spreadsheets showing the money flow, Madison's course materials which were largely plagiarized from actual successful influencers, parents' tax returns claiming business losses for a business that existed only in Madison's imagination. But the most damaging testimony came from someone unexpected, Trevor. He took the stand in an impeccable suit, every inch the forensic accountant. His testimony was clinical devastating. He documented everything during their relationship, initially thinking he was helping her legitimize her business. "I discovered she was selling courses while receiving family support and government benefits she wasn't entitled to," he stated. "When I confronted her, she said everyone did it, that taxes were for people who couldn't game the system." "Did you report this?" "No, I ended the relationship and maintained documentation. When the IRS contacted me, I cooperated fully." "What did your analysis of the defendant's finances reveal?" Trevor pulled out his own folders. "A circular fraud scheme. June paid the parents funded Madison while claiming tax deductions for her fake business. Madison sold fraudulent courses and hid the income, then claimed poverty online to solicit more funds. It's textbook financial fraud with family dysfunction as the delivery system." His eyes met mine briefly, an apology maybe, or just acknowledgement of the insanity we'd both witnessed. The prosecutor introduced one final piece of evidence, a recorded phone call between Madison and a student who'd bought her course. The student was demanding a refund, saying the strategies didn't work. Madison's recorded voice filled the courtroom. "Success isn't guaranteed. If you're not making money, you're not working hard enough. I can't help people who won't help themselves." The irony was so thick you could package it and sell it as a course. When testimony concluded, Judge Harrison looked tired. "I've presided over many fraud cases, but rarely one where the victims and perpetrators were so intertwined. Ms. June Matthews, you have the court's sympathy. To discover your generosity was funding criminal enterprise must be devastating." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "As for the defendants, we'll recess for today. Closing arguments tomorrow, then I'll consider sentencing recommendations." As marshals prepared to escort them out, Mom caught my eye. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something raw. Not remorse exactly, but recognition. The game was over. The bills had come due, and this time I couldn't pay them. Madison was less subtle. "I'll never forgive you," she screamed as they led her away. "When I get out, I'll ruin you. My followers will destroy you." All 800 of them, I thought, but didn't say. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Patricia guided me past them, but one question penetrated. "June, do you regret helping your family?" I stopped considering. I regret that my help enabled their crimes. I regret that love became transaction. But mostly I regret that it took federal prosecution for them to face consequences. "Would you do it again?" "No, and that's the most honest thing any of us have said in years." That night I sat with Sarah as the news coverage played. The anchors seemed stunned by the circular nature of the fraud, the family dysfunction that had metastasized into federal crime. Madison Matthews claimed to teach success while hiding income and begging for money, the reporter summarized. Her parents claimed tax deductions for her fake business, while their other daughter unknowingly funded the entire scheme. It's a cautionary tale of enabling meeting entitlement in the digital age. "You okay?" Sarah asked, muting the TV. "I testified against my entire family today. I'm not sure okay applies." "You testified to the truth. They committed crimes against themselves." My phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but I recognized the area code. The Federal Detention Center. "You have a collect call from Madison Matthews. Will you accept?" I declined and blocked the number. There was nothing left to say. The next morning brought closing arguments and Judge Harrison's verdict. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing would come later, but the maximums were clear. Mom and Dad faced up to 3 years each and hundreds of thousands in fines and back taxes. Madison faced up to 7 years for wire fraud, tax evasion, and false claims. As they led my family away in handcuffs, Madison turned one last time. No screaming now, just a look of pure disbelief. Even then, even convicted and facing prison, she couldn't understand how her influencer empire built on lies and my money had collapsed. I left the courthouse for the last time, Patricia beside me. "What now?" she asked. "Now I live my life, the one I should have been living all along." "Any regrets?" I thought about it as Portland's afternoon sun broke through the clouds. Just one. I wish I'd kept that first $2,400 for myself. Could have started this journey 8 years and $347,000 ago. But then Madison might never have been caught. True, maybe some expensive lessons are worth the price. As I drove home, my phone stayed silent. No family crises, no emergency requests, no guilt trips disguised as love. Just quiet possibility and a bank account that would never again be confused with a family fund. The Matthews family fraud had unraveled completely, each thread pulled, until only truth remained. And the truth, as it turned out, was exactly what I'd paid. Hundreds of thousands to learn that real family doesn't come with a price tag, and love that does isn't love at all. Madison would have years in federal prison to contemplate that lesson. I had the rest of my life to live it. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in late November, just as autumn was surrendering to winter. I'd been reviewing patient charts when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize but somehow felt I should. The voice on the other end made my heart skip. "June, this is Harold Brennan from Brennan & Associates. I'm calling about your grandmother, Rose Matthews." Grandma Rose. In all the chaos of the trials and family destruction, I'd somehow forgotten about my father's mother tucked away in a memory care facility for the past 3 years. Or so we'd been told. Did something happen? Quite the opposite. "Your grandmother has requested a meeting with you, urgently. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" The same law office where the will reading had shattered my world now held another surprise. But this time, I wasn't walking in blind and trusting. Patricia accompanied me, her presence a reminder that I had advocates, now people who protected my interests. Harold Brennan's conference room felt different this time. Sunlight streamed through windows I hadn't noticed before, and sitting at the table was someone I hadn't seen in 3 years, Grandma Rose, looking nothing like the dementia-addled woman my parents had described. "June." She stood steady and strong and embraced me with surprising vigor. "My dear girl, I've been waiting for this day." I pulled back, studying her. At 82, she should have been deep in memory care confusion. Instead, her blue eyes sparkled with sharp intelligence and something else, mischief. "Grandma, I don't understand. Mom and Dad said you had dementia, that you needed constant care." "Sit down, sweetheart." Harold poured June some tea. "She's going to need it." Over the next hour, my grandmother unraveled a deception that made Madison's fraud look amateur. 3 years ago, when early memory lapses had prompted medical evaluation, she'd received a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, not dementia. Concerned but functional, she'd started planning for her future care. "Your parents saw an opportunity," she said, her voice steady with controlled anger. "They convinced me to sign power of attorney to Madison, said she had more time to manage my affairs while you were so busy with work." Madison. They gave Madison control over your finances. "Temporarily," they said, "just until we figured out the best care situation." Rose's laugh was bitter. Within 6 months, they'd moved me to Sunset Gardens, a basic facility that accepted Medicaid. Told everyone I was too far gone to manage anything. "But you weren't—" "Oh, I had moments. Confusion, certainly. Good days and bad days. But dementia, no. And once I realized what was happening, I did what any smart old woman would do. I played along." Harold slid a folder across the table. "Your grandmother has been documenting everything for 2 years. with the help of a friend at the facility and a private investigator I hired on her behalf. The documentation was staggering. While I'd been funding my parents' lifestyle, they'd been systematically draining Grandma Rose's accounts. Her house sold for $400,000 with proceeds invested in Madison's influencer career. Her retirement accounts liquidated for care expenses while she lived in a Medicaid facility. Her jewelry family heirlooms were thousands, appearing in Madison's Instagram posts. They stole everything, I breathed, flipping through pages of evidence. Not everything. Rose smiled, and it was sharp as winter. They stole what they could find. But your grandfather was a clever man, and he taught me well. We had accounts they never knew about, investments and trusts they couldn't touch. I've been living on Medicaid not because I'm poor, but because I wanted them to think they'd won. Why didn't you contact me? Her face softened. You were drowning trying to save them, sweetheart. What could I add to your burden? Besides, I needed to gather evidence. Needed them to feel safe in their theft. The investigator followed the money, Harold explained. Madison took over $500,000 from your grandmother's known accounts over 3 years. She used it for luxury goods trips, failed business ventures, even that online course platform. $500,000 on top of what she took from me. Your family, Rose said dryly, has expensive taste in daughters, specifically one daughter. The investigator's report included surveillance photos that turned my stomach. Madison at luxury boutiques, signing receipts with Grandma's credit cards. My parents at the bank withdrawing cash from her accounts. Even photos of them at Sunset Gardens visiting just long enough to maintain the charade while rushing Madison to her next shopping spree. But here's the beautiful part. Rose continued, her eyes glinting. They were so greedy, so confident in my supposed dementia, they got sloppy. Madison filed paperwork claiming to be my sole caregiver, collecting government benefits for that care. While I was in a facility, while she lived at home, spending my money. That's fraud, Patricia said, speaking for the first time. Federal fraud if she crossed state lines or used mail services. Oh, she did both. Online shopping trips to California tax filings. My investigator has it all. I stared at my grandmother with new respect. You've been playing the long game. Sweetheart, when you're my age, all games are long games. She reached across the table, taking my hand. I watched what they did to you, how they bled you dry while planning to leave you nothing, how Madison preened and posted while you worked yourself to exhaustion. I couldn't save you then, you had to save yourself. But I could make sure justice found them. Harold cleared his throat. There's more. Your grandmother has been working with federal prosecutors. The evidence she's gathered doesn't just prove theft, it proves a pattern of elder abuse and fraud that adds significant time to their sentences. How much time? With the existing convictions and these new charges, your parents are looking at 10 years minimum. Madison could face 20. 20 years. Madison would be 45 when she got out her influencer dreams as dated as her last free Instagram post. But that's not why I called you here, Rose said. Harold, show her the real documents. Another folder appeared. Inside, a will dated just 6 months ago, witnessed and notarized. I read it 3 times before the words sank in. You're leaving everything to me. $2 million in assets they never found, plus whatever we recover from their theft. The house in Bend your grandfather loved. The investment accounts they couldn't touch. All yours. Grandma, I can't. You can, and you will. You're the only real family I have left. The only one who loved without a price tag. Her voice grew fierce. They stole from both of us, June. But we're not victims. We're survivors. And survivors get to write the ending. The next morning, federal marshals arrested my family again. The charges were a symphony of legal consequences: elder abuse, financial exploitation, mail fraud, wire fraud, false claims for caregiver benefits. The investigation I'd triggered had been a creek. Rose's evidence was a tsunami. This time, I didn't go to the courthouse. Instead, I helped my grandmother move from Sunset Gardens to a beautiful assisted living community where she could live with dignity and real care. As we packed her few belongings, they'd sold or stolen most of her possessions, she pulled out a small recorder. "Want to hear something interesting?" She pressed play. Madison's voice filled the room, recorded during a visit 2 years ago. "Just keep pretending Grandma. The more confused you act, the better. We need June to keep thinking you're gone so she doesn't get suspicious about the money. Once we sell your house, we can put you somewhere nicer. Promise." "You recorded them?" "Every visit. My friend at the facility helped. Sweet girl studying law at night school. I'm paying for her last year of tuition as a thank you." "How long have you been planning this?" Rose smiled, looking more like the grandmother who'd taught me to play chess than the fading woman my parents had described. "Since the day I realized your sister was measuring my house for her influencer studio while you were working a double shift to pay their mortgage. That's when I knew. One granddaughter inherited the family heart, and it wasn't the one they were protecting." The trials moved quickly this time. The evidence was too overwhelming, the patterns too clear. Madison's lawyer tried arguing diminished capacity due to her influencer delusions. But the jury wasn't sympathetic to someone who'd stolen from an elderly grandmother while posting about manifesting abundance. The sentencing made national news. "Influencer sentenced to 22 years for elder abuse and fraud" became the headline that ended Madison's online presence forever. My parents each got 12 years, their golden years, now iron-barred. But the real justice came in the victim impact statements. Rose, sharp as ever at 82, stood before the court in a St. John suit they'd never known she still owned. "My son and his wife convinced me I was losing my mind while they stole my life savings. My granddaughter Madison took my husband's legacy and turned it into designer handbags and failed business schemes. They left me in a Medicaid facility eating pureed food while they dined on my dime." She paused, looking directly at them. "But they made one mistake. They underestimated both June and me. They thought kindness was weakness, that love meant exploitation. Today they learn otherwise." Madison tried to respond, standing up despite her lawyer's attempts to stop her. "You're just bitter. When I'm out, I'll rebuild my followers." "Your followers," Rose interrupted calmly, "will be grandmothers themselves by then. Sit down, child. Your influence is over." That night, Rose and I had dinner at her new apartment. Real food, not the institutional meals she'd endured while playing her part. She decorated with photos salvaged from storage, including one of her and Grandpa on their wedding day. "He would have loved this," she said, raising a glass of wine. "Harold always said the best revenge was a life well lived. But he was wrong. The best revenge is justice served with a side of irony. They'll appeal. Let them. Every appeal means more legal fees. They can't pay more time added for wasting the court's time. I've got excellent lawyers now funded by their own theft returned to me." We talked until late, sharing stories of the years we'd lost to their deception. She told me about playing confused while documenting everything about the fury that kept her sharp when grief might have broken her. I told her about the birthday when they'd given me a scrapbook of my own servitude, about Trevor's unexpected alliance, about the freedom I'd found in saying no. "You know what the hardest part was?" Rose asked as I prepared to leave. "Watching them destroy you while I waited for enough evidence. Every time Howard called you for money, every time Madison posted another luxury haul, I wanted to scream the truth. But patience, June. Patience is how you catch predators. Was it worth it 3 years in that place?" She smiled, the expression transforming her face. "Sweetheart, I spent 3 years in basic care to ensure they'd spend decades in federal prison. I'd say I got the better deal." As I drove home, my phone stayed silent except for a single text from Rose. "Family dinner, Sunday my treat. Actually, Madison's treat. I'm using her seized assets to pay." I laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. My grandmother, the chess master who'd played dead to capture the king. Or in this case, the would-be influencer queen and her enabling court. Checkmate. The final trial began on a cold February morning that matched the chill in courtroom 1A. This wasn't just another hearing. This was the consolidated federal case that would determine whether my family spent the next 2 decades behind bars. Media coverage had exploded after Grandma Rose's revelations, turning what had been a regional curiosity into a national scandal. The influencer fraud family had its own hashtag. Documentary crews circled like vultures, and Court TV had dedicated a correspondent to daily coverage. I sat between Patricia and Grandma Rose in the gallery's front row. Rose wore her power suit like armor, her presence commanding despite her age. Behind us, reporters filled every available seat, their keyboards and cameras, ready to capture the Matthews family's final act. At the defendant's table, my family looked like strangers in their matching jail attire. Gone were Mom's careful makeup and coordinated outfits. Dad's perpetual tan had faded to prison pallor, but it was Madison who'd transformed most dramatically. No extensions, no filters, no designer, anything. Just a 26-year-old facing the possibility of emerging from prison in her late 40s. The prosecutor, Jennifer Martinez, had built her case like a fortress. 73 exhibits, 42 witnesses, financial records spanning a decade. The jury, 12 people who probably had their own family dramas but nothing approaching this scale, listened with expressions ranging from disbelief to disgust. "Ladies and gentlemen," Martinez began her opening statement, "this is not a case about family dysfunction. This is about systematic fraud perpetuated by 3 adults who viewed their relatives as personal ATMs. The defendant stole from a daughter who loved them and an elderly mother who trusted them all while claiming poverty and building a false empire on social media." The defense tried various strategies. Mom and Dad's attorney painted them as desperate parents trying to help a struggling child. Madison's new lawyer, the expensive one having fled after the elder abuse charges, went for the millennial sob story claiming she was a victim of toxic positivity culture and unrealistic social media expectations. But then the evidence started rolling out, and no amount of spin could soften its impact. First came my testimony expanded now to include the birthday scrapbook, the will reading, and every manipulation I could remember. The prosecutor had me read excerpts from my expense, tracking the running tally of sacrifice that had funded their comfort. June 2019. I read from my records. Dad's emergency dental work, $3,200. Same week, Madison's Instagram shows her at a spa retreat in Sedona. October 2020. Mom says they can't afford groceries. I send $500. Bank records show Madison's Sephora purchase for $480 that same day. December 2021, told they might lose the house. I empty my savings $8,000. Madison posts about her investment in a $5,000 camera she never uses professionally. The jury took notes, some shaking their heads. One woman who looked about my mother's age kept staring at Mom with undisguised contempt. Cross-examination tried to paint me as bitter, vindictive, attention-seeking. But Patricia had prepared me well. "You seem very prepared with all these records," the defense attorney suggested. "Almost like you were planning to use them against your family." I kept records because I was trying to understand where my money went. If tracking expenses is planning against family, then every household budget is a conspiracy. But you never said no until after the will reading. Correct. I trusted them until they put in writing that my trust was worthless. So this is about inheritance. This is about learning I'd been funding fraud. The inheritance just revealed it. Trevor testified next his forensic accounting background lending credibility to the financial maze. He'd created charts showing the circular flow of money, from me to parents to Madison and back around in the form of tax fraud. In my professional opinion, he stated, "This represents one of the most clear-cut cases of familial financial exploitation I've encountered. The paper trail is extensive and damning." Madison's attorney tried to discredit him. "You dated the defendant. Isn't this just revenge for a bad breakup?" "I dated someone I thought was an entrepreneur. I discovered she was a fraud. My personal feelings don't change the mathematical evidence." But the day's most powerful testimony came from Grandma Rose. At 82, she commanded the courtroom like a queen reclaiming her throne. She brought props, family photos showing her throughout the years, vibrant and clearly competent, juxtaposed with the confused elderly woman narrative my family had crafted. They told everyone I had severe dementia, she said, voice clear and strong. Meanwhile, I was documenting their theft, recording their visits, building this case. Does this sound like someone with severe cognitive decline? She then played the recordings. Madison's voice filled the courtroom cheerfully, discussing which of Grandma's assets to liquidate next. Mom suggesting they move her to an even cheaper facility to save money. Dad complaining that the power of attorney paperwork was too complex and couldn't Madison just forge some signatures. "Objection!" Madison's lawyer practically screamed. Overruled. The defendant's own words are admissible. The worst recording was Madison explaining to a friend how easy it was. "Old people forget stuff anyway. We just tell June that Grandma's too far gone to manage money. She'll never check because she's too busy working to pay our bills." In the gallery, someone gasped. The court reporter looked ill. "How did it feel," Martinez asked Rose, "to hear your granddaughter say that?" "Like watching my son become a stranger. I raised Howard better than this." But somewhere greed replaced love, and Madison learned that family meant opportunity, not obligation. The defense's cross-examination of Rose backfired spectacularly. They tried to establish she actually did have memory issues, that her current clarity was temporary. "Mrs. Matthews, isn't it true you were diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment?" "Yes, mild. Like forgetting where I put my reading glasses, not forgetting I had $500,000. "But you allowed your family to manage your affairs." "Under false pretenses. They said it was temporary. 3 years and $500,000 later, I'd say they lied." "Yet you continued to play along." Rose smiled, the expression sharp. "Young man, I spent 3 years eating pudding and pretending to be confused while documenting fraud. If that's not sound mind, I don't know what is. Would you like to see my chess rating from the facility? I beat everyone, including the staff." The gallery erupted in nervous laughter. Even the judge looked like he was fighting a smile. The prosecution then brought out the social media evidence. Madison's Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube accounts were projected on courtroom screens. The jury watched her transformation from struggling influencer to luxury lifestyle blogger, all time-stamped against my bank transfers and Rose's account withdrawals. "This is from March 2022, Martinez narrated. Madison posts about manifesting abundance and claims her success comes from hard work and positive thinking. Bank records show she deposited $20,000 from her grandmother's account that week. They played her course videos where she taught others to invest in themselves and ignore the haters. Code apparently for steal from family and block anyone who questions your income. The most damaging was a deleted video recovered from her cloud storage. In it, a drunk Madison filmed herself counting cash, laughing about stupid people who actually work for money and how family is just another word for funding. Madison tried to object from the defendant's table, but her lawyer shushed her. The damage was done. Character witnesses came next. Our former neighbors testified about watching me leave for double shifts while Madison sunbathed. The bank manager who'd processed Rose's withdrawals confirmed my parents always came together, always seemed nervous, always had Madison waiting in the car. Even Madison's few remaining friends turned. One testified that Madison had bragged about her business model, getting others to pay for everything while she built her brand. She said working was for people without vision, the former friend testified, said her family owed her success because they'd created her. It was weird. Weird how, like she genuinely believed she was entitled to everything because she existed. She called it return on investment, said her parents invested in creating her, so they owed her returns forever. The defense's case was anemic in comparison. They brought character witnesses who described my parents as loving and devoted, but crumbled under cross-examination when asked if they'd ever seen this loving family actually interact. Madison's witnesses were other failed influencers who testified that everyone exaggerates online, not exactly a compelling defense for fraud. Madison insisted on testifying against her lawyer's advice. It was a disaster. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she began, already crying. "I was just trying to build something special." "By stealing from your grandmother?" Martinez asked. "It wasn't stealing. She said I could manage her money. While she had dementia, she seemed fine to me." Martinez pulled up a text Madison had sent. "Grandma's really out of it today. Perfect time to get those transfer forms signed." Does that sound like someone who thought their grandmother was fine? Madison's response was to blame everyone else. "I'd never supported her dreams. Our parents had promised to help, but always complained. Rose had so much money she'd never miss it. Society put pressure on young women to succeed. The economy made it impossible for her generation. So everyone is responsible except you," Martinez summarized. "I'm a victim too." "Of whom?" "Some of circumstances." The gallery's response said everything. Even the bailiffs looked disgusted. Closing arguments took a full day. The prosecution laid out the case like a roadmap of greed, each turn marked by my depleted bank account or Rose's emptied assets. The defense tried for sympathy, but what sympathy could exist for 3 adults who'd systematically destroyed 2 family members who'd loved them? The jury deliberated for exactly 93 minutes. On all counts of wire fraud, tax fraud, elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud, the foreman read, "We find the defendants guilty." Madison screamed an influencer's last attempt at controlling the narrative. Mom fainted, or pretended to. Dad just stared at me with naked hatred. "I hope you're satisfied," he mouthed. I was. Not happy, not celebratory, but satisfied that truth had finally won over manipulation. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded us. Rose handled them like the pro she'd become. "Justice was served today," she said simply. "My son, his wife, and my granddaughter chose greed over family. They'll have decades to contemplate that choice." "Mrs. Matthews, what about June, your other granddaughter?" Rose pulled me close. "June is proof that DNA doesn't determine character. She's the granddaughter of my heart and the only family I need." Someone asked if I had any comment. I thought about all the things I could say, all the pain I could share, all the receipts, literal and metaphorical, I could provide. Instead, I said, "I spent 8 years and $347,000 learning that love shouldn't have a price tag. My family is going to prison, but I'm finally free. That's all that matters." As we walked away, someone shouted a final question. Madison had a message for her followers. She says she'll come back stronger. Any response? I turned back, looking at the courthouse where my family would soon be sentenced to decades behind bars. By the time Madison gets out, influence will mean something completely different. Maybe she'll finally have to develop an actual skill. I won't be around to find out. Rose squeezed my hand as we walked to the car. "Proud of you, sweetheart. You didn't let them make you cruel." "Just honest grandma. Turns out that was cruel enough." The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Dad got 15 years. Mom got 12. Madison got 22, the maximum for her combined crimes. The judge called it one of the most egregious cases of family exploitation he'd ever seen. Madison had to be dragged from the courtroom still screaming about her followers, her brand, her future comeback. The last thing she yelled was my name, promising revenge when she got out. By then I'd be 50. She'd be 48. An influence like her family's love would be nothing but a memory of something that once cost everything and turned out to be worth nothing at all. The Matthews family fraud was over. The Matthews women who'd survived it, Rose and I, drove home together ready to build something new from the ashes of what greed had burned. A real family, no price tag required.